Hey truckers, today we're seeing part 11 of Reincarnation of the Businesswoman at School. Let's dive into the video. And this was just the second time that she had met Lung Xiaoting. She only liked his outstanding appearance till now, and didn't know much about his personality. It wasn't hard for her to get over it. She just felt that it was a shame that she lost the chance. Nice to meet you too, Miss Chiu, Gu Ning said politely. All right, it's time for the meal now. Let's go dine together, Su Jinchen said, and then they left together. Gu Ning and Lung Xiaoting sat in Su Jinchen's car, and Chiu Yusin took Su Qining's. I think that Gu Ning is younger than 20. Although Chiu Yusin already got over it, she couldn't help gossiping. Probably just turned 18. I'm surprised that Xiaoting likes a girl who is so much younger than him, Su Qining said, but she only dared to say it when Lung Xiaoting was absent. Hey, what do you want to have? Su Jinchen asked Gu Ning. Gu Ning was the guest and guests decided first. Anything that you think is delicious, Gu Ning replied. Well then, I'll make the decision. Since Gu Ning said so, Su Jinchen would choose for Gu Ning. Oh, boss, did you get injured anywhere? Su Jinchen suddenly thought of the question. Although they both looked fine, it was necessary for him to care about them. Not really, Lung Xiaoting said. Good to know. Su Jinchen relaxed. Watching the familiar scenes through the window, Gu Ning had mixed emotions again. She had been on this road countless times and had stayed in this city for so many years during her previous incarnation. Lung Xiaoting sensed her emotional change. Although he didn't know why she was suddenly so sad, he clasped her hand to comfort her. Gu Ning didn't want her bad mood to affect Lung Xiaoting, so she immediately stopped thinking about her previous incarnation. Discover new stories at nv/lbin.c/o. Oh, how long will you be staying in the capital? Su Jinchen asked. A week at the most, Gu Ning answered. It's just a dozen days away from the New Year festival. I thought that you'd go to my boss's place to spend the festival with his family, Su Jinchen said. Hearing that, Lung Xiaoting looked at Gu Ning with anticipation. Apparently, he had the same idea. However, Gu Ning rejected. I don't think that it's necessary. In other words, they hadn't been together for long, and it was impossible that she would spend the New Year festival with Lung Xiaoting's family. Gu Ning was right, but it hurt Lung Xiaoting's heart. He was immediately upset. Please don't be disappointed. I just think that we've only been together for a short time. Neither your family or mine has any idea that we're already boyfriend and girlfriend. Don't you think it would be abrupt if I suddenly show up in front of your family during the New Year festival? We can tell them right now, Lung Xiaoting said. However, my mom won't allow me to have a boyfriend until I'm in university. If she finds out now, I'm afraid that she'll have a bad impression of you. What if she didn't permit us to be together? Gu Ning said on purpose. Hearing that, Lung Xiaoting compromised. Fine, we'll wait till you go to college. Ha ha, Su Jinchen snorted with laughter. It seems like I better find a girl who has already graduated from college, so that we can get married directly, and I don't need to worry about her age. Su Jinchen was actually making fun of them. Hearing that, Lung Xiaoting was displeased. He also wanted to marry the girl that he loved right away. When Gu Ning had accepted him as her boyfriend, Lung Xiaoting never thought that they would be apart again, so he naturally had the idea that they would be married one day. However, Gu Ning threatened Su Jinchen, Jinchen, aren't you afraid that if you annoy your boss, he'll arrange some tasks for you and you'll have no time to date, let alone get married? No, please. Su Jinchen was scared and begged, I'm sorry. I apologize. If he annoyed Ling Xiaoting, it could possibly happen. The capital was very large, and it took at least 45 minutes of driving from the airport to downtown when there was no traffic jam. It was 12 p.m., so they drove smoothly and arrived at a hotel which the Su family owned an hour later. When they walked into a private room, Gu Ning finally turned her phone on. The minute her phone was powered on, she received 7 messages which reminded her that she had missed calls from the same person, Siti. There was also a message sent by Siti. Gu Ning, I know that you'll be fine, but I'm very worried about your safety. I'm flying to the capital now. I can't relax until I see you in person. Please wait for me. Gu Ning felt stressed and a little guilty, because she knew that Siti liked her but she wouldn't give him any response. She already had Ling Xiaoting after all. Gu Ning called Siti back without delay. She was fine, so she didn't want him to waste his time flying to the capital to see her. However, his phone was powered off. He was probably already in a plane. Gu Ning then showed the message to Ling Xiaoting. She had no intention to hide it from him. Ling Xiaoting was obviously displeased when he read the message. I'll go with you, Ling Xiaoting said in an undeniable tone. He wouldn't let Gu Ning meet Siti alone. He knew that Siti liked Gu Ning, and he wouldn't allow them to meet each other alone. Sure, Gu Ning said. She also didn't want to give Siti any chances, so it was better if they went to meet him together. After that, Gu Ning sent a message to Siti. Thank you so much for your care. I'm fine and safe now, but since you're already coming, please call me when you arrive. It took around 3 hours to fly from City G to the capital by plane, and Siti would be arriving within 2 hours. Gu Ning planned to meet Siti directly at the airport after the meal, but it would seem like she wanted him to leave right away, and it was a little impolite. Thus Gu Ning changed her mind. Siti was being kind to visit her, and she should welcome him as her guest. Su Qinin drove slower than Su Jinchen and arrived later than them, so Su Jinchen ordered the food before they arrived in the hotel. Both Su Qinin and Qiu Yusin felt a little nervous dining at the same table with Ling Xiaoting, so they stayed quiet most of the time, but they had a burning curiosity towards Gu Ning. They both wanted to figure out her basic information, like her family background or how she met Ling Xiaoting and so forth. During the meal, Ling Xiaoting kept putting dishes into Gu Ning's bowl once in a while, and ignored all the single people around the table. Can't you stop doing that? It hurts our feelings. Su Jinchen complained. Why don't you go find yourself a girlfriend? Ling Xiaoting retorted. Su Jinchen was struck speechless. If he had a girlfriend, he would do the same thing. In fact, there were many outstanding girls around Su Jinchen, like his cousin's female friends. Many of them were attractive. Qiu Yusin, for instance, no matter if it was her family background, appearance, education, profession, or manners, she was 1 in a million. Su Qinin also tried to create chances for them, but they just had no feelings for each other. After the meal, Ling Xiaoting told Su Jinchen to go alone and leave the car for him. Su Jinchen was irritated and complained that his boss chose his girlfriend over his best friend. Su Jinchen had no intention to interrupt their date, but he was annoyed at Ling Xiaoting's attitude. Anyway, he had to follow his boss's order. However, before he left, Su Jinchen asked Ling Xiaoting, "Boss, wanna hang out tonight? We can call our other brothers. They're still in the capital." "I'll see," Ling Xiaoting replied. He wasn't sure yet. Fine, Su Jinchen said resignedly and left with Su Qinin. Although Su Jinchen had to take Su Qinin's car, he proposed that he drive, because he disliked the way that Su Qinin drove. Once they left, Su Qinin asked Su Jinchen without delay, "Jinchen, Gu Ning looks so young. Is she still a student?" "Yes, a senior in high school," Su Jinchen answered. What? A senior in high school? She was only 17 or 18. Although they both knew that Gu Ning was much younger than them, they thought that she had to be a college student. Where is she from? What do her parents do? How did she become Shouting's girlfriend? Su Qining asked one question after another in a hurry. Why are you asking so much about her? Su Jinchen liked gossip to some extent, but he didn't dare to expose details about his boss's personal affairs. Otherwise, everyone in the Red Flame would have known about Gu Ning already. I'm just curious. You clearly know that Shouting has never been so close to a girl. Aren't you curious that he suddenly shows up with his girlfriend? Su Qining argued. I don't know the details actually. If you want to know, go and ask him yourself. Su Jinchen shrugged. He indeed knew little about Leng Shouting and Gu Ning's relationship. Fine. Forget it. Su Qining didn't have the courage to ask Leng Shouting in person. Otherwise she wouldn't ask Su Jinchen now. I am just kindly reminding you to be friendly to Gu Ning, or Su Jinchen purposely didn't finish his sentence. Su Qining was a nice person, but she was spoiled by her family, so she would show her dislike on her face and didn't care about others' feelings. Su Jinchen was worried that she might not get along well with Gu Ning and cause unnecessary trouble. I will! Su Qining raised her voice. Even if she really couldn't get along with Gu Ning, she wouldn't act against her for Leng Shouting's sake. Of course, Gu Ning should be friendly to her first. She had a good impression of Gu Ning till now, but she didn't know much about her, so she had no idea whether they could be friends. Gu Ning and Leng Shouting went to a tea house waiting for Siti. Ariad updated stirise at n/vel/bin.com. In the middle of waiting, Leng Shouting received his grandpa's call, but he didn't avoid Gu Ning and took it directly. Grandpa, Leng Shouting answered. Although he sounded cold as usual, he had affection towards his grandpa. His grandpa was the only one who made him feel like he had a family, and Leng Shouting only cared about his grandpa among the Leng family. The minute that Leng Shouting finished his sentence, his grandpa roared into the phone, "Do you still know that I'm your grandpa? Why didn't you tell me anything after you went through such a terrible accident? Were you going to hide it from me forever?" His grandpa criticized loudly, and Gu Ning was able to hear it clearly. Master Leng was obviously worried about his grandson. Leng Shouting's profession was full of dangers and risks, and he was often involved in highly dangerous situations. His grandpa was aware of that, but it didn't mean that his grandpa didn't care about him. Instead, Master Leng was always concerned about Leng Shouting's safety. And this time when he found out that Leng Shouting could have died in the plane accident, he almost lost control of himself. I'm fine now, Leng Shouting said. Then why didn't you come back home? Master Leng questioned. Leng Shouting had been in the capital for at least 2 hours, but he didn't go home. I have something to deal with now, and I'll be back tonight, Leng Shouting replied. Master Lin knew that Leng Shouting was a mature and stable man, so he didn't force him to come back right now, but reminded him to be home at night before he hung up. After he hung up the call with his grandpa, Leng Shouting asked Gu Ning, "Do you want to meet my grandpa later?" No, I'm not mentally prepared yet. Gu Ning rejected. Thinking of meeting his family, Gu Ning got nervous all of a sudden. Leng Shouting told her that he only cared about his grandpa among the Leng family, so Gu Ning valued his grandpa's opinion of her most, but she just thought that it wasn't the right time to meet his family. Leng Shouting didn't insist. Then I'll first take you to where I live after we meet Siti, and then I'll go back to the Leng family house. Sure, Gu Ning replied. In fact, Gu Ning could stay in the Huangdang Hotel for free, but she didn't want to turn Leng Shouting down. When the plane had just landed at the airport and was still moving, Siti couldn't wait to turn his phone on. He knew that Gu Ning would definitely have replied to his message. He was right. Siti called Gu Ning without delay after reading her message. Gu Ning, where are you now? Siti asked. I'm in the Jinlin Hotel. Have you arrived yet? Gu Ning asked. Yes, but I haven't gotten off the plane yet. I'll be right there, Siti said. Great, Gu Ning said before she hung up. Siti had told someone to prepare a car for him before he boarded the plane, so he quickly drove to the Jinlin Hotel the minute that he left the airport. Even though he knew that Gu Ning was fine and safe, he was in a hurry to meet her. Thus he drove at a high speed, exceeding the speed limit along the way. Normally it would take at least 50 minutes to get there. He spent less than 30 minutes on the road. Once he got out of the car, Siti called Gu Ning. Gu Ning told him the number of the private room, and Siti ran to it without delay. Come on in please, Gu Ning said when Siti knocked on the door. Siti was excited to meet Gu Ning, but he was soon struck dumb when Leng Xiaoting appeared in his sight too. It's you? Siti had met Leng Xiaoting before in a fight, so he had a grudge against Leng Xiaoting. Leng Xiaoting only gave him a glance and stayed calm. Hi! Gu Ning immediately welcomed him. Although she was displeased that Siti showed obvious dislike towards Leng Xiaoting, she didn't show it. She understood that there was an old grudge between them. Leng Xiaoting had ruined Siti's plans before, so Siti naturally hated Leng Xiaoting. However, as long as they didn't fight again, Gu Ning wouldn't interfere. Seeing Gu Ning, Siti instantly changed his attitude and tone. I'm so glad to see that you're fine. Thank you so much. I feel guilty that you flew all the way to visit me. If you don't mind, please stay and have dinner with us, Gu Ning said. We're friends. And I should care more about you, Siti said airily. At the same time, he was shocked to see that Gu Ning was with Leng Xiaoting. Is Leng Xiaoting Gu Ning's boyfriend? Thinking of that, Siti was stunned, because there was a clear abyss between Leng Xiaoting and Gu Ning. It would be extremely shocking if they were a couple. Siti was also worried that Gu Ning probably already knew his identity. Although he wasn't sure, it was highly possible. If Gu Ning knew his identity, why she was still willing to make friends with him instead of keeping a distance away from him like everyone else. Maybe Leng Xiaoting didn't tell her the truth for her safety. No matter what, since Gu Ning didn't point it out, Siti decided not to say it. He didn't ask about their relationship either, but had a plan in his mind. Of course I'm willing to dine with you. You've always promised to invite me to have a meal together, and now you finally fulfill your promise, Siti said to Gu Ning. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting immediately sensed what was on his mind. Gu Ning didn't think it was a big deal, but Leng Xiaoting was greatly displeased. He met Siti's eyes with strong hatred in his gaze. Well then please have a rest in your room first. I've reserved a room for you, and we can have dinner around 6 p.m. tonight. We've had a long journey in the plane today, and we also need a rest, Gu Ning said. She intentionally made an excuse to separate the two men. Siti was disappointed, but he understood that Gu Ning had had a long day today. When he left, Siti gave Leng Xiaoting a meaningful and provocative glance. He had already made up his mind to compete with Leng Xiaoting for Gu Ning. Although Leng Xiaoting was Gu Ning's boyfriend now, they weren't married yet and the future was unpredictable. Gu Ning was too young to get married yet, so he still had several years to chase her. He challenged me. Leng Xiaoting complained after Siti was gone. Haha, Gu Ning snorted with laughter seeing Leng Xiaoting's aggrieved face. She thought that it probably wasn't a good idea for her to have let the two men meet each other today. Nevertheless, it had already happened, so Gu Ning left it, but asked Leng Xiaoting, do you lack confidence in yourself, or me? Leng Xiaoting didn't answer her question, but suddenly hugged Gu Ning and kissed her. He indeed lacked confidence in both of them. They weren't married yet, and anything could happen before that. In fact, what worried Ling Xiaoting the most was that he could die during one of his tasks. It was the first time that he had been so terrified of death. If he died, he would lose Gu Ning forever. Ling Xiaoting vented his anxiety by kissing Gu Ning wildly. Gu Ning understood that Ling Xiaoting felt a sense of crisis now. Even though she promised that she would stay by his side, no one knew what would happen in the future. Siti had already challenged Ling Xiaoting, so he had to do something now. If he still didn't say anything, or do something, he wouldn't be a real man. As the kiss went on, Ling Xiaoting gradually wanted more. Gu Ning was always sexually attractive to him, but it wasn't an appropriate place for them to make love, so he was pushed away. Seeing Ling Xiaoting feeling so uncomfortable, Gu Ning flushed and felt a little guilty. It's just not appropriate. Ling Xiaoting understood that, so he tried his best to curb his sexual desire, but it was very hard. In the end, Ling Xiaoting pulled Gu Ning, walking to their room without delay. Ling Xiaoting reserved a room for him and Gu Ning too when he booked the room for Siti. It was only 3 hours away from the dinner, and they could have a rest in the room. Unexpectedly, the room was of great use now. The minute that they walked into the room, Ling Xiaoting pressed Gu Ning on the bed. He didn't immediately thrust into her body, but touched and kissed her body step by step to turn her on. Although he was eager to f*ck her, he cared about Gu Ning's feelings too. And Gu Ning wasn't a sexy toy in his eyes. Instead, he respected her a lot. Gu Ning's body was trembling slightly from sexual excitement. And soon they began to do what they both wanted. In another presidential suite, Siti stood by the window thinking. He was thinking about his feelings towards Gu Ning and his identity. Could he make Gu Ning happy? There were countless people who wanted to kill him after all. And if Gu Ning really became his girlfriend one day, she would probably be in the same danger as him, which wasn't something that he wanted. However, he couldn't persuade himself to give up on chasing Gu Ning just because of that. As long as he could protect her, they would be safe and happy. Siti smiled. As the head of the chain gang, he was always mentally agile, but now he suddenly hesitated. He really had changed after he met Gu Ning. Since he refused to give up, then he would follow his heart. Siti also understood that it would take skill to get the girl that he wanted. He didn't care about the fact that Gu Ning had been with Ling Xiaoting at all. All he cared about was the result. It was during the day, so Ling Xiaoting restricted himself. The two finished after half an hour, but Gu Ning was still exhausted because Ling Xiaoting had been very fierce. "Do you feel uncomfortable?" Ling Xiaoting asked. He sounded worried. He knew that they were going out later, but he couldn't control himself. "I need a rest," Gu Ning said and turned her back against him. She wasn't mad, but they had always done it with the light off before, and she felt strange to be naked in front of him in the daylight. Ling Xiaoting noticed that Gu Ning wasn't mad, so he was relieved. He cuddled her from the back and lay in silence. They rested for an hour, and got up at around 5:30 p.m. They dressed and went down to the private room before they called Siti. The minute that the two men met each other, there was high tension in the air. Although they didn't argue or fight, Gu Ning felt uneasy and immediately broke the ice. "Hi, Situ. What do you want to have? Please order whatever you want to eat." Siti wore a smile that he thought was charming and said to Gu Ning gently, "Sure, I will." After that, he sat down beside the table. In fact, Siti was also a handsome man, and he had an attractive smile. If Gu Ning hadn't met Ling Xiaoting before him, she probably would have fallen in love with him. Although Ling Xiaoting was better looking than Siti, he didn't smile at all, so he wasn't that attractive. Siti, on the other hand, was adept at showing his charm. However, no matter how charming he was, Gu Ning felt nothing at all, because she already had Leng Xiaoting as her boyfriend. "We're ready to order, please," Gu Ning said to the waiter, and the waiter handed the menu to Gu Ning at once. Gu Ning gave the menu to Siti directly, and he would be the first to order. Siti didn't hesitate and ordered several dishes. "When will you go back?" Siti asked Gu Ning after they finished ordering upstati from n0/v/lbn/co/m. "In a few days probably," Gu Ning replied. "If you need any help, you can call me," Siti added. "No, thanks. I can help Ning Ning." Before Gu Ning could say a word, Leng Xiaoting turned Siti down. The capital fell within the spread of his influence, and there was nothing he couldn't help Gu Ning with. "Well, it's too early to reject me now. You and I have totally different backgrounds, so what we can do is different too. Aren't you afraid to hurt the Ling family?" Siti smiled a little in a provocative tone. Leng Xiaoting stayed quiet, because Siti had hit the point. He served in the military, and had to obey some strict principles, so it wasn't always convenient for him to deal with something. And if he accidentally provided the Ling family's enemies with ammunition, his family could be hurt. He couldn't deny Siti's words, and was more irritated now. Seeing Leng Xiaoting being upset, Gu Ning was slightly angry and tried to defend him. "Well, I think I need different friends who work in different fields, which would be helpful to my business, right?" In other words, she needed help from different people, instead of Siti alone. Hearing that, Leng Xiaoting was cheered up, but Siti just smiled a little. Before long, the dishes were on the table. During the meal, Leng Xiaoting still kept putting dishes into Gu Ning's bowl as usual. Although Siti hated seeing that, he stayed calm, as if he didn't notice it at all. However, as long as Siti got the chance to talk with Gu Ning, he wouldn't allow Leng Xiaoting to lead the conversation. "I think that your jewelry business is quite profitable now. When will you open a branch?" Siti asked Gu Ning. "I plan to go to university in the capital, so my next step is to move the headquarters to the capital, and I'll get some trustworthy managers to deal with the branches," Gu Ning said. "Very well. Have you found any suitable stores available for renting yet?" "There are several stores in good locations under my name. If you need, I can help," Siti said. No man could resist the charms of a beautiful woman, and Siti would do everything to win Gu Ning's heart. "No, thanks," Leng Xiaoting said before Gu Ning once more. However, even if Leng Xiaoting didn't do that, Gu Ning would reject too, because she had already agreed to let Leng Xiaoting help her with that. However, Siti ignored Leng Xiaoting, and only looked at Gu Ning. He wanted to hear the answer from Gu Ning. "Situ, thank you so much for your kindness. I'll deal with the store in the capital myself. If I need your help, I'll call you." Compared with Leng Xiaoting, Gu Ning rejected Siti more gently. She didn't want to lose a friend like Siti. In addition, there was no grudge between Siti and her, so it wasn't necessary for her to keep a distance from him. Although she understood that Siti wanted more from her, he hadn't done anything yet. "Sure, if you need anything, just call me." It wasn't a surprising answer, so Siti didn't feel disappointed. Instead, he was confident that Gu Ning needed him. They then ate the meal in harmony. Siti would directly ignore Leng Xiaoting and talk with Gu Ning only, but he wouldn't forget his manners or intentionally argue with Leng Xiaoting. Gu Ning was aware that Siti was a well-educated gentleman who admired her but wouldn't interfere in her relationship with Leng Xiaoting. After the meal, Leng Xiaoting used an excuse and pulled Gu Ning to leave right away, and left Siti alone in the room. Siti didn't stop them. He watched them disappearing from his sight, thinking deeply. Ling Xiaoting drove Gu Ning to his house, but he remained silent along the way. Gu Ning pursed her lips. Are you mad? No, Ling Xiaoting answered, but his annoyed tone betrayed him. You're lying, Gu Ning said. Obviously she didn't believe his answer. I just don't like him, Ling Xiaoting said in the end. He was talking about Siti Yi, of course. Gu Ning felt like laughing, but said to him seriously, if you dislike every man who admires me, I think you will probably be mad often. Gu Ning wasn't a narcissist, but was telling the truth. With her outstanding appearance and ability, she had plenty of admirers. During the short time after she had been reborn, she had already met Qin Yifan and Siti Yi. Both of them were quality men, although they couldn't compare with Ling Xiaoting. It didn't matter which one of them was her boyfriend, she would live a good life. However, in the end she chose Ling Xiaoting. Well, compared with me, you're better looking and from such an influential family. There must be far more women who admire you than men who admire me. Nevertheless, the point is whether you're determined to be with me only, no matter how many admirers you have. Gu Ning naturally was displeased when other women made eyes at Ling Xiaoting, but as long as Ling Xiaoting loved only her, she wouldn't be mad at him. Actually, she wouldn't care about other men since she already had Ling Xiaoting as her boyfriend, but Ling Xiaoting couldn't tolerate that other men still tried to please her when he was present. Ling Xiaoting immediately stopped the car at the roadside and looked to Gu Ning with affection. I don't care how many women admire me. I only care about you, and you're my one and only love, and I will love you forever. Exactly. I don't care how many men admire me either, and I won't give them any chances, so please don't show me your angry face along the way. Gu Ning complained. Ling Xiaoting was struck dumb, but he agreed with Gu Ning. He wasn't actually mad at Gu Ning, but he did show his angry face often in front of her when they were alone together. I'm sorry, Ning Ning. It's all right, I'm not blaming you. Let's go ahead, Gu Ning said. Ling Xiaoting then relaxed. Up to TED chapters nnvelben.com. Within a short time, they arrived at a high-end housing area with a great environment. Ling Xiaoting stopped in front of a house with a garden. Gu Ning looked at it. The house was large and was about 200 square meters in size with a big garden that was about 100 square meters. The house price was extremely high in the capital, and only the super rich could afford a large house with an outdoor garden here, but it wasn't actually surprising given Ling Xiaoting's family background. I usually stay in the capital for a short time, and this is where I live when I'm in the capital. This house is cleaned regularly, so we can live in it any time, Ling Xiaoting said. After that, Ling Xiaoting held Gu Ning's hand, walking into the house. The lights were on, and Gu Ning took a glance around the house. Its decoration was simple as well as elegant, and didn't show any hint of luxury, which matched Ling Xiaoting's character really well. Although the house was furnished with the simplest essentials, there was everything they needed in it. You can leave if you're busy. I'll be fine here. Gu Ning knew that Ling Xiaoting had to go back to the Ling family's house, so she didn't want to waste his time. Ling Xiaoting hugged Gu Ning, pressing his head into her fragrant hair. Apparently, he didn't want to leave. After a long while, he finally said, "Wait for me, and I'll be right back." "Sure," Gu Ning replied. Then Ling Xiaoting pressed a light kiss on Gu Ning's forehead before he left. The Ling family's house was a legacy from their ancestry and was built in the early 20th century. It had been rebuilt and repaired partially, but still kept the classic style. And all the members of Ling family lived in the same large quadrangle. In the living hall, Ling Xiaoting's second aunt, Jiang Shiyuan, was criticizing Ling Xiaojia, who had been fooling around for half a year after her graduation. However, Ling Xiaojia didn't care what her mother was talking about. She was watching TV while eating snacks by herself. "Welcome home, Lord Ling." At this time, the housekeeper's surprised voice sounded, which struck both Jiang Shuyuan and Leng Xiaojia dumb for a second. Ling Xiaoting is back? Jiang Shuyuan and Leng Xiaojia were obviously displeased after hearing the news that Leng Xiaoting was back. Leng Xiaoting was too outstanding among the young generation in the Leng family, so he was likely to inherit the Leng family's properties, thus Jiang Shuyuan and Leng Xiaojia were jealous of him. Because of Leng Xiaoting, Jiang Shuyuan's son, Leng Xiaomin, could lose the chance to inherit the Leng family properties. Although Leng Xiaoting was the oldest grandson of Master Leng and it was quite reasonable that he was Master Leng's successor, the other members in the Leng family held opposite opinions because his parents had passed away a long time ago. However, none of the members in the Leng family was clear about Leng Xiaoting's ability and influence. Even Master Leng knew no more than the others in their family. Only Master Leng was aware that Leng Xiaoting had some properties under his name. The other people in the Leng family just knew that he was a major general in the army. Even so, Leng Xiaoting was the youngest major general in history at only 25-year-old, which was enough to prove his outstanding ability. Leng Xiaoting had told Gu Ning earlier that he only cared about his grandpa in the Leng family, and the rest were all unimportant. The housekeeper was named Leng Changji. He was a distant cousin of the Leng family and then became Leng Weihua's confidant, so he was also friendly to Leng Xiaoting and Leng Xiaoting respected him as well. Uncle Leng, Leng Xiaoting called him. Master is in the study, Leng Changji smiled gently. Great, I'll go meet him right now, Leng Xiaoting said, then walked inside directly. Visit en Velben, cm for EU ovals. Hi, Xiaoting. Even though Jiang Shuyuan disliked Leng Xiaoting, she still needed to pretend superficially. Nice to meet you, Aunt Jiang, Leng Xiaoting said coldly. Leng Xiaojia, on the other hand, ignored Leng Xiaoting, but Leng Xiaoting didn't care at all. He walked straight upstairs. In the study on the second floor, Master Leng was sitting behind a desk reading a newspaper. Hearing someone knocking on the door, he opened his mouth. Come in. Leng Xiaoting pushed the door open, walking inside. Seeing Leng Xiaoting, Master Leng immediately put the newspaper down and complained, Why are you so late? I've been waiting for you. I wanted to come even later, but I thought that I can leave earlier if I come earlier, Leng Xiaoting said on purpose. Master Leng indeed turned angry. What? You just arrived at the capital. Where are you going? My house, Leng Xiaoting answered. You scarcely came back. Couldn't you stay here for a night? Master Leng was apparently annoyed. He missed his eldest grandson so much, but it seemed like his eldest grandson didn't care about his feelings at all. He was normally busy and it was understandable that he wouldn't come home, but now since he was already home, why couldn't he stay? It's inconvenient. Leng Xiaoting preferred to stay alone with Gu Ning. Why is it inconvenient? This is your family's place. Master Leng almost lost his temper. I have a girlfriend. Leng Xiaoting didn't hide the truth. What? Hearing that, Master Leng rounded his eyes in shock and couldn't believe his ears. What did you say? Say it again. I have a girlfriend, Leng Xiaoting said with patience. Master Leng abruptly stood up from his chair. He was too surprised to believe that it was real. Really? Do you really have a girlfriend? Yes. Leng Xiaoting gave his grandpa an affirmative nod. Master Leng was more than thrilled now. His grandson finally had a girlfriend. Leng Xiaoting was so handsome and charming, but never got close to any women. Master Leng had even doubted his grandson's sexual orientation, which was later proved to not be true. However, no matter how Master Leng persuaded Leng Xiaoting to date or have a girlfriend, Leng Xiaoting would reject him without hesitation. Although Leng Xiaoting was still young, and it was too early to get married now, Master Leng was worried that his grandson would probably be single and alone forever. Master Leng didn't care about family background. It would be better if Leng Xiaoting fell in love with a girl who came from a family at the same level as his, but Master Leng would also support Leng Xiaoting even if he chose a girl from an ordinary family in the end. Master Leng simply hoped for his grandson to be happy. Therefore, Master Leng didn't ask Leng Xiaoting about his girlfriend's family background, because he trusted Leng Xiaoting. "Where is your girlfriend from? When can you bring her to meet me?" Master Leng inquired anxiously. "She comes from City F. She won't see you until she finishes the National College entrance exam and goes to university in the capital." Gu Ning had told him that she wasn't mentally prepared yet, so she wasn't willing to meet his grandfather now. Moreover, it was already against Gu Ning's willingness that Leng Xiaoting told his grandfather information about her. The National College entrance exam? How old is she? Master Leng was shocked. 18, she's going to attend the National College entrance exam soon, Leng Xiaoting answered. 18? In other words, Leng Xiaoting was 7 years older than the girl. All of a sudden, Master Leng had a strange feeling because his grandson fancied a girl who was much younger than him, but at least an 18-year-old girl was already an adult. Leng Xiaoting checked the time on his phone and said, "Grandpa, if there isn't anything else, please allow me to leave now. I don't want to make her wait for me." Leng Xiaoting was talking about Gu Ning, of course. Now? Master Leng frowned with unhappiness. Leng Xiaoting had only stayed for a few minutes and he was already in a hurry to leave. "Fine, but do come to have breakfast with me tomorrow morning," Master Leng said. "Sorry, I have something else to deal with," Leng Xiaoting rejected. "How about dinner?" Master Leng asked again. "I probably won't be free then. If I come back, I'll tell you beforehand." "Oh, please don't send people to follow me or investigate her," Leng Xiaoting said before he turned around leaving directly. Master Leng was furious. His grandson chose his girlfriend over him. However, Master Leng knew Leng Xiaoting's personality well. Since he didn't want him to do so, he better not do it. Otherwise, it would probably be a disaster. Leng Xiaoting then walked downstairs through the living hall. Jiang Shuyuan and Leng Xiaojiao were already gone to avoid meeting Leng Xiaoting, but Leng Xiaoxuan, who was Leng Xiaoting's youngest uncle's son, came back just as Leng Xiaoting walked out. Seeing Leng Xiaoting, Leng Xiaoxuan was excited. He jumped in front of Leng Xiaoting and greeted him with great passion. "Hi, Xiaoting! Welcome home!" Leng Xiaoxuan admired Leng Xiaoting very much and made up his mind to join the army and become a respected military officer one day like Leng Xiaoting. Therefore, when Leng Xiaoting was home, Leng Xiaoxuan would beg him to teach him fighting skills. Leng Xiaoting normally wouldn't reject his request, so Leng Xiaoxuan had learned a lot from Leng Xiaoting. Leng Xiaoting's youngest uncle's family didn't have special feelings towards Leng Xiaoting because he was always cold and stayed aloof from others, so they were like strangers without affection. Leng Xiaoxuan was an outgoing young man. In the beginning, he was scared of Leng Xiaoting, but as time went by he gradually grew to like him. As for Leng Xiaoxuan, Leng Xiaoting treated him like his younger cousin, although they weren't very close. "Hi," Leng Xiaoting said perfunctorily, and continued to walk outside. "Xiaoting, where are you going?" Leng Xiaoxuan asked. "I'm busy," Leng Xiaoting answered. "When will you be back to teach me Kung Fu?" Leng Xiaoxuan asked again. "When I'm free," Leng Xiaoting said and disappeared out the gate. Leng Xiaoxuan was a little disappointed, but he understood that Leng Xiaoting was always busy. Visit en Velben, cm for EU ovals. The minute that Leng Xiaoting left the Leng family's house, he received Su Jinchen's call. "Hey, boss, wanna hang out at 8 p.m. tonight?" Su Jinchen asked. "Let me ask Ningning first." Leng Xiaoting had no interest in entertainment places. He would rather stay at home and have fun with Gu Ning alone, but if Gu Ning wanted to go, he would be her company. Su Jinchen felt hurt. He thought that his boss was showing off their sweet relationship in front of him, who was still single, again. After hanging up with Su Jinchen, Ling Xiaoting called Gu Ning and asked her whether she was willing to hang out with his teammates. Gu Ning thought that it was boring to stay in the house all day, so she agreed. Ling Xiaoting then called Su Jinchen for the address before he went to pick Gu Ning up. King's Entertainment Club was a high-end entertainment place in the capital. And people who came here to have fun were either the rich or the authorities, because ordinary people couldn't afford it. However, Su Jinchen didn't have to pay here because the Su family owned the King's Entertainment Club. When Ling Xiaoting along with Gu Ning arrived at King's Entertainment Club, it was almost 9:30 p.m. because the capital was a large city with a lot of traffic. In a super luxurious private room, Su Jinchen, Chen Meng, Si Ming, Chiu Yusin and Su Qining had already arrived. Su Qining often hung out with Su Jinchen and was familiar with Chen Meng as well as Si Ming to some extent, so she was invited to this gathering. Chiu Yusin was Su Qining's best friend, so she naturally came along with Su Qining. However, Su Qining only knew that Chen Meng and Si Ming were Su Jinchen and Ling Xiaoting's friends in the army. She didn't know that they were a team called the Red Flame. After drinking for a while, Ling Xiaoting was still absent, so Chen Meng asked Su Jinchen, "Jinchen, why hasn't Xiaoting arrived yet?" Su Jinchen told them that Ling Xiaoting was coming at around 8 p.m., but 1.5 hours later, he was still absent. Even if there was a traffic jam on the road, it was enough for Ling Xiaoting to drive here from the Ling family's house. In order not to expose their identities, they would call Ling Xiaoting by his name, instead of calling him their boss. He needed to pick someone up first, Su Jinchen said, but didn't tell them who the person was. Su Jinchen intentionally kept it a secret. He was curious about how they would react when Ling Xiaoting showed up with a girl all of a sudden. Su Qining also had the same idea, so she remained quiet. Sometimes, fate was really a wonderful thing. Chiu Yusin had just gotten over Ling Xiaoting, and then her heart skipped a beat when she saw Si Ming. The two had been talking throughout the night. Si Ming wasn't as handsome as Ling Xiaoting, but was also a good-looking and sexy man. Moreover, he was humorous and easily impressed girls. Si Ming was actually just being polite and talking with Su Jinchen when such a great beauty appeared in his sight. Unexpectedly, they shared a lot in common. It was the first time that Su Qining had seen Chiu Yusin enjoying the conversation so much with a man. As her best friend, Su Qining knew Chiu Yusin well. Chiu Yusin was a beauty who never talked much to men, but once she became talkative in front of a man, she had to have fondness towards him. Apparently, Si Ming was the man. "Hey, does Si Ming have a girlfriend?" Su Qining asked Su Jinchen. Hearing that, Su Jinchen immediately realized the reason why Su Qining asked the question, because he had also noticed Si Ming's unusual behavior tonight. "Nope," Su Jinchen smiled. Su Jinchen thought that Chiu Yusin was a great girl and his parents also thought highly of her. Unfortunately, he felt nothing with her. Right at this moment, someone knocked on the door. "Come in please," Su Jinchen said. King's Entertainment Club was a high-end entertainment place with excellent equipment for privacy. Without the permission of the people in the room, no one could push the door open from the outside. Without a doubt, the newcomer was Ling Xiaoting. They were precisely right. The minute the door was pushed open, Ling Xiaoting appeared in their sight. However, when they noticed that there was a girl who was holding Ling Xiaoting's hand beside him, both Chen Meng and Si Ming were so shocked that they abruptly stood up from the sofa. "What is going on? Why is boss holding a girl's hand?" Within a second, Chen Meng recognized Gu Ning. "Gu Ning? Do you know each other?" Su Jinchen was surprised. Chen Meng wasn't in the mood to answer his question. "Hi, nice to meet you again," Gu Ning smiled. "Are you?" Chen Meng pointed at their hands, which were clasped together. Actually, their relationship was quite obvious, but he couldn't believe it. It was completely shocking news that Leng Xiaoting suddenly had a girlfriend. Yes. A couple, Leng Xiaoting said, and sat down on the sofa with Gu Ning. Wow, what a memorable moment! Si Ming was excited. Their first reaction after they found out that Leng Xiaoting was in love was to be happy that he was finally fell in love with a girl, instead of asking about the girl's background. In their eyes, it was already a miracle that Leng Xiaoting was willing to date a girl or have a girlfriend. Come on, let's have a toast for Xiaoting, to congratulate that he finally has a girlfriend. Si Ming immediately poured 2 glasses of wine for Leng Xiaoting and Gu Ning, as if the man who finally had a girlfriend was himself. Hearing that, everyone raised his or her glass. Find PT Tez on n/VLN.cm. Leng Xiaoting was happy to hear that too, so he lifted his glass without hesitation. Gu Ning did the same thing. Leng Xiaoting asked her with care then, "Do you drink? If you don't need to do it." No, we must have a toast." Before Gu Ning could answer, Si Ming interrupted and sent Leng Xiaoting a wink. Wine is a great thing to shorten the distance between a man and a woman. Ha ha, ha ha. Everyone burst into laughter. Gu Ning, instead, flushed slightly, while Leng Xiaoting was a little sexually excited. Although he had already slept with Gu Ning, he would love to give it a try when Gu Ning was drunk. Of course, Si Ming was just joking, and they had a toast and cheers. "Hi, my name's Si Ming. May I know your name?" Si Ming asked Gu Ning kindly after they sat down again. "My name's Gu Ning," Gu Ning replied. "How long have you been with Xiaoting? He has kept it a secret for a long time, and we were all worried about him." Si Ming complained. "Well, just a short time I think," Gu Ning said. On the other side of the room, Su Jinchen asked Chen Meng, "Meng, how did you know Gu Ning? Do you still remember that I told you that we met a girl in the middle of our task in City G before, and the girl killed 2 men by herself?" Chen Meng asked Su Jinchen. "Is she?" Su Jinchen was shocked. "Yes," Chen Meng said. "Jesus!" To Su Jinchen's astonishment, Gu Ning was so unbelievable. Leng Xiaoting drank with Gu Ning once in a while, which made Gu Ning think of what Si Ming had just said. She teased, "Are you trying to get me drunk?" Leng Xiaoting panicked a little. Obviously, Gu Ning had hit the point. Gu Ning smiled but didn't say anything further, and kept drinking with the others. When it was almost 12 a.m., they were about to leave. Gu Ning had drunk a lot, but she didn't seem drunk at all, which confused Leng Xiaoting. While they passed another private room, Gu Ning clearly heard someone shouting for help. The music was too loud and her voice was relatively low, so people would normally ignore it. Gu Ning instantly used her jade eyes and saw that a fat, greasy, middle-aged man pressed a young woman on a sofa. The man was going to rape her, and the woman was struggling. There were 2 men and 2 women beside them. The 2 men were also around 40 years old, while the 2 women were merely 25 years old and dressed in a sexy way. Both of them leaned against the men's bodies and allowed the men to touch their bodies casually. Apparently, they weren't ladies. They were drinking, watching and cheering. When Gu Ning clearly saw the face of the woman who were pressed on the sofa, she was surprised, because she had met the woman once in the airport today. The woman was precisely the one who had followed Leng Xiaoting and complimented him behind them. If the woman was willing to sell her body, Gu Ning wouldn't be involved, but she seemed to be ashamed and in pain, so Gu Ning couldn't allow the tragedy to happen. Without a second thought, she ran over and kicked the door open. Leng Xiaoting's group and the people in the private room were both shocked by the loud sound. Leng Xiaoting and others didn't know why Gu Ning suddenly kicked the door open until they saw what was going on in the room. Before the people inside could react, Gu Ning strode ahead and lifted the man who was pressing on the woman up before throwing him away. Everyone present was amazed by Gu Ning's sudden movement. Ouch, the man moaned in pain. Who are you? How dare you do that to me? As the owner of this King's Entertainment Club, Su Jinchen naturally wouldn't tolerate the fat, greasy man's immoral behavior. He quickly walked inside and snapped at them, "How dare you do this in King's Entertainment Club?" The men and women in the private room were astonished. Su Jinchen was the owner of this club, and they didn't dare to annoy him. What's going on here? Gu Ning turned to the young woman and asked. It's you? The woman was quite surprised when she recognized Gu Ning. Do you know each other? Su Jinchen asked her. Not really, we just met at the airport today, the woman explained and felt embarrassed. I remember you, and you said that you're a writer, Gu Ning said. The woman was surprised that Gu Ning had such a good memory, and felt flattered that Gu Ning still remembered her. However, thinking of what just happened, the woman wore an angry expression, pointing at the fat, greasy man and said in anger, "This man is Chenhua, who is a TV director. He told me that he liked my novel and wanted to make it into a TV series, so we met here. However, he made advances at me, and promised to buy my novel as long as I had sex with him. I refused, so he used force." Hearing that, everyone was displeased. Although they knew that there were many unspoken rules in the entertainment industry, it was unacceptable that the man used violence, especially in the Su family's club. Suddenly, an idea dawned on Gu Ning. She had plans to be involved in the entertainment industry. Since the woman's novel impressed the director, it must be a profitable deal, and she could buy it herself. Don't worry. I'll take you out of here safely, Gu Ning said. Thank you so much, the woman said. Let's call the police, Su Jinchen said. Chenhua's group immediately begged him, please don't call the police. It's all my fault, and I'll never do it again. Su Jinchen, instead, ignored them and told the manager of the club to handle it before they left. When they got outside, the woman noticed Cho Yusin and her eyes lit up at once. Cho Yusin was a well-known young model domestically, but she wasn't a household name yet because she had only been in this industry for 2 years. Seeing the woman being so excited, Cho Yusin gave her a friendly smile. The woman was thrilled, but didn't dare to talk to her. Where do you live? We can send you home, Gu Ning said to the woman. It was late and it could be dangerous if she went home alone. The woman seemed embarrassed. I live far away from here. I can take a taxi myself. Are you sure? It's very late now, Gu Ning said. Well. After what had just happened, the woman was indeed terrified, so she said in the end, I live in XX Hotel. Obviously, her family wasn't in the capital since she stayed in a hotel. And the hotel was located in a remote area which wasn't safe. That's not a safe place. Why don't you stay with me in the Jinlin Hotel? Gu Ning said. She had booked a room there and hadn't checked out yet, so the woman could stay there. Oh, no, thanks. Jinlin Hotel was a 5-star hotel and the woman couldn't afford it. Otherwise, she wouldn't stay in a small hotel in a remote place. Don't worry. I booked a room there, but I'm not staying there. It would be a waste if it's empty, Gu Ning explained. The woman hesitated and felt ashamed. She wasn't worried that Gu Ning would hurt her, or she wouldn't have been rescued by them. Gu Ning didn't give her a chance to reject her and pulled her to get into a car before saying goodbye to Su Jinchen and the others. Full 0W current novels on n/o/v/3l/b in.co/m. They had all drunk, so nobody was driving. Su Jinchen had arranged chauffeurs for them. After that, Si Ming immediately sent a message to the rest of the Red Flame teammates. Big news! Our boss has a girlfriend. He didn't give more details. All the other teammates were shocked after reading the message, and the first one who called Si Ming was Xian Bei. Ming, what exactly happened? Is it real? What does the girl look like? What does she do? The minute Si Ming answered his call, Xian Bei asked one question after another in excitement. Go and ask our boss if you want to know more. Si Ming purposely didn't tell him any details. Xian Bei was mad, but before he could say another word, Si Ming hung up on him. In the following minutes, Si Ming received calls from the other teammates, and he gave them the same answer, which annoyed everyone. None of them dared to ask Leng Xiaoting in person. Si Ming wasn't by their side, or they would directly punch him for the answer. Chen Meng and Si Ming sat in the same car. On the way back to Si Ming's apartment, Chen Meng said, "Aren't you afraid that boss will get revenge on you once he finds out that you've told the rest of the teammates?" "Why?" "Boss already brought his girlfriend to meet us, he wants it to go public," Si Ming said airily. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare to tell the other teammates. Jinlin Hotel wasn't far from the King's Entertainment Club, so they arrived a few minutes later. On the way, Gu Ning got to know that the woman's name was Duan Lisan and she was from a fourth-tier city. She had published several books. And Chenhua liked her latest novel, which was an imperial harem drama, so they had an appointment at the club. Unfortunately, she had almost been raped. When they arrived at the hotel, Gu Ning told Leng Xiaoting to wait for her in the parking lot, and she went to the room with Duan Lisan. Duan Lisan was struck dumb when she found out that the room was a presidential suite. "Miss Gu, this." Gu Ning ignored her shock and laid her cards on the table. "Miss Duan, to be honest with you, I plan to be involved in the entertainment industry. And since there is a director that likes your novel, I think it must be good to some extent. I would like to cooperate with you, and you can also be a full-time scriptwriter in my company. As for the salary, it depends on your ability." "What?" Hearing that, Duan Lisan rounded her eyes in shock again. She thought that it was too good to be true. "I'm serious, and you can have a night to think about it. Let's exchange our numbers. If you agree to cooperate with me, or work for me, we can talk about the details tomorrow. If not, I won't force you," Gu Ning said. Duan Lisan was of course more than willing to either work with or for Gu Ning. After exchanging numbers with Duan Lisan, Gu Ning left. After a long while, Duan Lisan finally got her mind back and started to believe that it was real. She walked around the luxurious presidential suite in excitement. This was the first time that she had ever stayed in a five-star hotel. Once they got back to the house, Leng Xiaoting clasped Gu Ning in his arms at once, as if they had been apart for ages. "Why are you so good at drinking?" Leng Xiaoting asked and complained a little. He seemed dissatisfied that Gu Ning wasn't drunk at all even after she had drunk a lot. Gu Ning knew exactly what was on Leng Xiaoting's mind, and said, "Do you really want me to be bad at drinking? What if I got drunk during a meal with other men in the future and wasn't able to go home by myself? Aren't you afraid that someone would sexually assault me?" Hearing that, Leng Xiaoting was struck dumb and realized that it was indeed possible, so he hugged Gu Ning in his arms tightly and said, "Remember to not get drunk if I'm not with you, all right? Actually, you better not drink at all." If she didn't drink, there was no chance for her to get drunk. However, in actual fact, it was impossible because Gu Ning had to socialize with her business partners. Leng Xiaoting understood that, but he couldn't help but remind her to be careful. "I can't refuse to drink, but don't worry, I won't get drunk," Gu Ning comforted him. It was tiring having such a sensitive boyfriend, but Gu Ning enjoyed it. Leng Xiaoting was satisfied. Do you plan to hug me in the living room forever? Seeing that Ling Xiaoting had no intention to let her go, Gu Ning felt like laughing. The two had gone into the house and were still in the living room. Hearing that, Ling Xiaoting immediately said, "Let's go to the bedroom." Afterwards, he pulled Gu Ning, walking straight to the bedroom. Gu Ning felt a little embarrassed, because it seemed like she couldn't wait to make love with him. I need to get a person's phone number. Can you help me with that? Gu Ning asked and tried to stop Ling Xiaoting from approaching her. Sure, but the phone number has to be applied for with his or her ID number, Ling Xiaoting answered. Will you please help me get the phone number of the famous director, Liu Zhan? Gu Ning asked. No problem, Ling Xiaoting replied with alacrity. He already knew Gu Ning's intention, but didn't ask further. As long as Gu Ning wanted something, he would do anything for her. He did not want Gu Ning to turn to another man for help. After the small talk, Ling Xiaoting couldn't wait any longer and pressed Gu Ning to the bed, kissing her wildly. However, just as Ling Xiaoting's hand moved to her abdomen, Gu Ning felt something warm flowing out of her body. Wait a moment. She immediately caught Ling Xiaoting's hand. What? Ling Xiaoting was confused. I need to use the bathroom first, Gu Ning said and pushed Ling Xiaoting away, running to the bathroom. Ling Xiaoting was left alone on the bed and had no idea what was going on. The minute that Gu Ning walked into the bathroom, she looked in her underwear and saw a touch of blood. She forced a smile. Her period came at the wrong time. It seemed like Ling Xiaoting would have to take a cold shower to deal with his sexual desire. I'm so sorry. My Aunt Flo is visiting, Gu Ning said to Ling Xiaoting, embarrassed after she left the bathroom. She then went to open her suitcase. Luckily, she had the feeling that her period was coming soon, so she had prepared tampons. Otherwise, it would be even more awkward. What Gu Ning said was like a bucket of cold water poured on Ling Xiaoting's head, but he still cared about Gu Ning's body first. Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? No, Gu Ning shook her head. She walked back to the bathroom with a tampon, while Ling Xiaoting walked out of the bedroom too. When Gu Ning came out again, Ling Xiaoting walked in with a glass of warm water. Drink some of this to warm your body, Ling Xiaoting said to Gu Ning. Thanks. Although Gu Ning was fine, she didn't want to turn Ling Xiaoting down. Afterwards, Ling Xiaoting reminded Gu Ning to have a good rest, and he went straight to the bathroom to help himself. Gu Ning felt a little guilty, but thought that it was funny. Ling Xiaoting had a cold shower before he cuddled Gu Ning, falling asleep in the bed. The next day around 8 a.m., Gu Ning was having breakfast with Ling Xiaoting when City called her. City told Gu Ning that he was leaving for City B, and that he would meet up with her back in City G. Ling Xiaoting was unhappy that City kept calling and meeting with Gu Ning, but he was also happy to know that City was leaving. A few minutes later, Gu Ning's phone rang again. Hi, she said. Miss Gu, good morning. It's Duan Lisen. There was a light smile on Gu Ning's lips, and she asked, May I know your answer? Yes, I'm willing to follow your lead, Duan Lisen said. She decided to work for Gu Ning. It seemed more stable if she joined Gu Ning's company as a scriptwriter. As long as she became a scriptwriter in Gu Ning's company, she could have more chances and resources to create. Thus it was a great deal to her. Duan Lisen's major was film and television screenwriting, and she had been an excellent graduate to some extent. She wouldn't allow herself to miss the chance that Gu Ning had provided. She would work harder to be an outstanding scriptwriter. All West ch.rs on n.o/vli/n/.cm. Duan Lisen had thought about it and her dream the entire night and barely slept until daybreak. She thought that Gu Ning probably got up too around 8 a.m. and she couldn't wait to call Gu Ning. She immediately told Gu Ning her answer when the call was answered. Gu Ning wasn't surprised. Sure, I'll meet you in the hotel to talk about the details after my breakfast. Very well, Duan Lisan said. After hanging up the call with Duan Lisan, Gu Ning told Leng Xiaoting that she was going to the Jinlin Hotel to discuss business with Duan Lisan and that he didn't need to keep her company if he was busy. Hearing that, Leng Xiaoting was displeased, as if he had been abandoned by Gu Ning. I'm not busy today, he said. In other words, he could go with her if she wanted him to. Didn't you say that you would help me get Lu Zhan's phone number and find a good store as well as an office building with a great location? Gu Ning asked. She had no intention to get rid of Leng Xiaoting, but she was afraid that he would forget the important things. Right at this moment, Leng Xiaoting's phone rang and a new message came in. He looked at it and then gave his phone to Gu Ning. I've already gotten his phone number. All west ch.rs on n.o/vli/n/.cm. Lu Zhan's phone number was there along with lines of words which explained why Lu Zhan had been thrown out of the entertainment industry. Tang Bingsen was the man who had thrown Lu Zhan out. Reading the name, Tang Bingsen, Gu Ning got nervous and a touch of animosity flashed through her eyes, because Tang Bingsen was precisely Tang Aining's father in her previous incarnation. What's wrong? Leng Xiaoting asked, noticing Gu Ning's sudden emotional change. Nothing, Gu Ning said, but didn't explain further. Leng Xiaoting didn't ask further, but felt worried about Gu Ning because he saw the obvious animosity in Gu Ning's eyes, although he had no idea who it was aimed at. 2 years ago, Lu Zhan had planned to shoot a TV series of which the Tang family had been the investor. However, the Tang family had made an abrupt decision to replace the leading actress with a newcomer without any acting skills. Lu Zhan, who had always had a high standard for his work's quality, had refused to do so, and he had been forced out of the industry afterwards. Before long, Gu Ning adjusted her emotions and calmed down. She looked to Leng Xiaoting and complimented plainly, "Thank you so much for your fast and detailed information." Leng Xiaoting was happy at being complimented by Gu Ning and said, "I've already sent people to find a store and an office building with a great location, but it takes time." No matter what Gu Ning needed, he would help her do it right away. It was easy to get someone's phone number, but it took time to find a good store and an office building. Moreover, Leng Xiaoting wanted to give Gu Ning a few choices. Gu Ning smiled resignedly, "Fine, then let's go to the hotel together." Leng Xiaoting wanted to spend every second with Gu Ning, which was slightly annoying sometimes. Getting Gu Ning's permission, Leng Xiaoting beamed with happiness. After breakfast, Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting left together. The minute that Gu Ning arrived at the Jinlin Hotel, she read an extract from Duan Lisan's Imperial Harem drama. Gu Ning wasn't a professional, but she was able to distinguish the good ones from the bad ones. She had to admit that this was an excellent novel. After reading its extract, Gu Ning went on to read the first chapter of the novel. It was full of novelty and Gu Ning thought that it could be popular. "I think that this is really good." "It will certainly be popular," Gu Ning complimented. Duan Lisan was excited that Gu Ning approved her novel. "However, I think that it'll be better if the director also likes it. The director will only be absorbed in shooting if he is interested in the story." Although Gu Ning was the investor, she wasn't a dictator. Hearing what Gu Ning had just said, Duan Lisan felt nervous again, but she couldn't agree more with Gu Ning, because normally the director was the decision-maker when it came to the script. The New Year festival is around the corner. You can go back home and spend the festival with your family first, and we'll discuss more after the festival. I'll inform you. You don't need to be worried, Gu Ning said. Of course I trust you, Miss Gu. Although Duan Lisan was anxious, she chose to believe Gu Ning. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting then left the hotel, and Gu Ning called Lu Zhan at once. Lu Zhan was in a cafe, leaning against a sofa, sighing with sadness. He just finished a conversation with another director, but he didn't get the result that he wanted. The director wanted Lu Zhan to be his co-director, but Lu Zhan's name wouldn't be shown on the screen because he didn't want to annoy the powerful person who had shut Lu Zhan out of the entertainment industry. Besides, Lu Zhan would only get the basic salary without a bonus, which was complete exploitation. However, if Lu Zhan disagreed, he wouldn't find another suitable job. All of a sudden, his phone rang, and it was a strange number. "Hi. Mr. Liu, this is Gu Ning. We met on the plane. I must apologize that I got your phone number without your permission, but I wanted to talk to you about our potential cooperation concerning TV shows and movies. Is it convenient for you to meet me?" Gu Ning asked politely. Lu Zhan didn't know Gu Ning's name, but he recognized her voice. He was greatly surprised that she would call him. Gu Ning had apologized in the beginning because she had secretly gotten his phone number and Lu Zhan forgave her. And apparently she knew that he was a director because she wanted to talk to him about TV shows and movies. As for Gu Ning's invitation, Lu Zhan had no idea that Gu Ning was going to hire him. He thought that Gu Ning was probably a student who was majoring in film and wanted to learn something about that from him. "Sure. I'm free now." Lu Zhan welcomed her. Gu Ning had saved his life after all. "Great. Where are you right now?" "I'll come to you," Gu Ning asked. "I'm in California Cafe at table number 8, Lu Zhan replied. Half an hour later, Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting found him in the cafe. Seeing Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting, Lu Zhan immediately stood up to greet them. "Nice to meet you. Please have a seat. What do you want to drink?" Lu Zhan asked. "2 cups of mocha please," Gu Ning said directly without reading the menu. "Sure, please wait a second," the waiter said and left. "May I ask? Why do you want to talk about TV shows and movies?" Lu Zhan asked. Speaking about the topic, Lu Zhan instantly wore a serious expression, which showed that he was indeed a professional. "I read the news about Director Liu, and heard that you've been shut out of the entertainment industry by a powerful figure till now," Gu Ning put it plainly and wasn't worried that Lu Zhan might be unhappy. Lu Zhan, instead, was already used to it. "That's true." Gu Ning smiled and asked, "Then do you want to come back? Do you want to be famous again or even more famous than 2 years ago?" Hearing that, Lu Zhan looked at Gu Ning with an astonished face. He obviously understood what Gu Ning was talking about, but he didn't know why she brought it up. Could she help him? Nevertheless, why would she? No matter what, Lu Zhan still answered Gu Ning's question with sincerity, "Of course I do." He had worked in the entertainment industry for more than half of his life, and it was already part of his life, so he had a high standard for his work's quality. Unconsciously because of that, he had annoyed a powerful figure and had been shut out till now. "If you trust me, you can cooperate with me," Gu Ning said. "You?" Lu Zhan was surprised as well as curious. Gu Ning added then, "I know that I'm young and that you might doubt my ability, because many people have done the same thing but all of them changed their minds in the end. You can never judge a person from appearance. I'm a businesswoman, and I appreciate your way of directing and your talent. I have always wanted to get involved in the entertainment industry, and I think that you're a great choice to be the general director in my company. What do you think?" Lu Zhan was shocked after that. What? This girl is going to be involved in the entertainment industry? Lu Zhan indeed doubted Gu Ning's ability because of her young age. However, just as Gu Ning had said, it was unreasonable to judge a person from their appearance. He had met many different kinds of people in the entertainment industry, and he was able to form an accurate opinion of a person at first sight. Seeing Gu Ning being so serious and sincere along with her air of maturity, Lu Zhan believed that she wasn't lying and she had no reason to deceive him. However, what worried Lu Zhan was the fact that Gu Ning would be affected because of him. "Miss Gu, I've angered a powerful figure so he shut me out. Even if I finished a great TV show or a movie, it wouldn't pass the censoring," Lu Zhan said. Although he was badly in need of help now, he didn't want to hurt anyone else's career. "It will," Leng Xiaoting said with confidence before Gu Ning could say a word. He didn't care about the Tang family at all. Lu Zhan was surprised. Are they more powerful? Lu Zhan wasn't dumb, and he sensed that Leng Xiaoting wasn't simple after he said that. In addition, Leng Xiaoting had an air of nobility and power. "Director Lu, please don't worry about that. Since I came to you during this time, I don't care who has shut you out," Gu Ning said with confidence too. It seemed like they could indeed help Lu Zhan. "Do you know who has shut me out?" Lu Zhan asked. Lu Zhan actually had no idea who the powerful figure was. Gu Ning laughed lightly and said coldly, "The Tang family." It wasn't a surprising answer to Lu Zhan. He thought for a while before opening his mouth again. "Miss Gu, thank you so much for your approval. Nevertheless, since you already know me, I assume that you must be aware of my way of working. I'm very strict with the actors in each show, especially the leading actors. I have no request for famous ones, but he or she must be skillful at acting. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been shut out just because he had refused to use an actress without any acting skills." Lu Zhan added later, "As for the script, I must be involved too. I will only use scripts that I'm interested in, so that I can get absorbed in shooting the story. Of course, I know that it's important to satisfy the audience's need, and I will certainly do that, but I can't promise that each of my works will be popular. Instead, I can only promise that I'll do my best every time." Lu Zhan thought that it was necessary to lay his cards on the table, in case they disagreed with each other while working together in the future. Hearing that, Gu Ning smiled. "I can't agree with you more, and I value quality the most as well." Lu Zhan was excited to hear that. "Well then, I think that we can have a great cooperation." They shared the same values and the same goal, which was quite exciting. "I'm looking for a suitable office building for my company at the moment, and I won't register a new company until the office building is settled, so we'll begin to work after the New Year festival," Gu Ning said. "Sure," Lu Zhan replied. He was a little uneasy that the company hadn't been established yet, but all he could do now was to wait. "As for the actors and scripts, you can have complete control of it as long as you're the director." Gu Ning would allow Lu Zhan to make the decisions all on his own, but there would be more than one director in her company. "I already found an interesting novel about an imperial harem drama, and you may read its extract first. If you're interested in it too, we can shoot the story first once our company is established. If you're not interested, I can hire another director to shoot it, and you can prepare for your own shows," Gu Ning said. "Sure, I will," Lu Zhan said. Then Gu Ning took out pieces of paper with the extract on and gave it to Lu Zhan. Lu Zhan read the story and his eyes lit up. Apparently, he liked it too. After reading it, Lu Zhan complimented the story plainly. "I think that it's a great story. It's very different from previous ones, and I'm interested in the details of the story." Lu Zhan was satisfied with the extract, but he hadn't read the whole novel, so he wasn't sure whether its details were also attractive. "Well, I'll send you the novel then. If you're interested, we can buy this IP one. I already hired the writer to be a scriptwriter in our company. You can talk to her if you have any questions after the New Year festival," Gu Ning said. Till now, they had made great progress, and they would discuss the rest after the company was established. 1. IP stands for intellectual property which has been copyrighted. "Director Lu, see you then." Gu Ning stood up, reaching out her hand to Lu Zhan. Lu Zhan immediately stood up, shaking hands with Gu Ning. "It was very nice meeting you today, boss." After that, Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting went to have lunch together. "Where do you want to go next?" Leng Xiaoting asked Gu Ning when they left the restaurant. Gu Ning thought for a while and said, "The New Year festival is coming. Let's go to the shopping mall. I want to buy gifts for my family." "No problem," Leng Xiaoting said. He held her hand while walking to the parking lot. On their way, Leng Xiaoting asked Gu Ning, "What's the name of your new entertainment company?" "Well, I'll call it Fanghua Entertainment," Gu Ning said. "What about the employees? Do you need me to help you hire people?" Leng Xiaoting asked. All.ch.rs on n.o/vli/n/.cm. That would be so much better. However, it seems like you've done everything for me. Gu Ning suddenly realized that Leng Xiaoting had helped her a lot. "You're the big boss, all you need to do is count the money," Leng Xiaoting joked. "Haha, you're right." Gu Ning agreed. Leng Xiaoting took Gu Ning to the best shopping mall in the capital. Seeing the familiar places, Gu Ning had mixed emotions again, but in order to not worry Leng Xiaoting, she tried to curb her anger. She walked to the male clothing area first to buy some clothes for Leng Xiaoting. The minute that Leng Xiaoting and Gu Ning walked inside, they attracted attention from people around them. To be specific, many people were surprised by Leng Xiaoting's extraordinarily handsome appearance. "Welcome," a saleswoman walked over and greeted them with passion. "Nice to meet you, Sir and Mississippi. You may try any pieces that you like." "Thanks," Gu Ning said. She walked around, followed by Leng Xiaoting. With a glance, Gu Ning chose a thick, linen coat and gave it to Leng Xiaoting. "Try it." Leng Xiaoting was surprised. Gu Ning then explained, "The New Year festival is coming, and I want to buy my boyfriend a New Year gift." Hearing that, Leng Xiaoting was touched. This was Gu Ning's gift for him, and he definitely wouldn't reject it, so he directly changed his coat with the new one. Leng Xiaoting always wore black clothes and had an air of coldness, which made people want to stay away from him, but now this linen coat animated him. Gu Ning's eye lit up and she complimented him, "You look so great no matter what you're wearing. I'm glad that you like it." Leng Xiaoting stared at Gu Ning with affection. He couldn't care less about his clothes or style of dressing, he only cared about Gu Ning's opinions. "Well, we are definitely buying this coat." Gu Ning was very satisfied. "I think we need a wool sweater, a pair of pants and shoes as well." After they shopped for a while, Leng Xiaoting was wearing a totally new outfit, which animated him greatly. "Very nice. Let's go and pay the bill." Gu Ning didn't bother to ask the price and took out her card to settle the account. The outfit cost nearly 100,000 yuan. Leng Xiaoting didn't pay the bill before Gu Ning could, because it was Gu Ning's gift to him. However, some people around them had the opposite idea. There were two women who had been shopping along with two men standing beside Gu Ning, and the two women said acidly, "Gee! What an extraordinarily handsome man. It turns out that he is just a pretty boy." "Exactly. To think I was envious of that girl just now." Leng Xiaoting ignored them, but Gu Ning was displeased. She looked to the two women coldly and said, "You don't know our relationship at all, so why did you call my boyfriend a pretty boy? Is there anything wrong with me wanting to buy a gift for my boyfriend? Or, do you think that it's noble that you beg your men to buy you an expensive bag?" Gu Ning had just heard those two women playing cute in front of the two men so that the men would buy them designer bags and clothes. It was obvious that the two women were merely materialistic girls. Gu Ning hit the point and the two women were embarrassed. However, the two men beside them had no intention to help. They stood aside to watch the drama, because they knew that the two women only loved their money. Of course, the two men were just playing with them too. They were willing to pay a limited amount of money for them. Although Gu Ning hit the point, they were unwilling to admit it. The woman who was wearing a white feather coat criticized Gu Ning. "What are you talking about? I love Haoxuan, not his money." Saying that, the woman held onto the man's arm like they were truly in love. She didn't notice that the man's face contorted with disdain, but Gu Ning did. The woman was indeed a fool. "Exactly, I also love Yihua, not his money." The other woman who was wearing a black feather coat echoed. "Oh, really?" Gu Ning sneered. "Then why don't you pay your bills yourself?" The two women were mad, but didn't know how to argue back. In fact, they only loved the two men's money. Otherwise, with their outstanding appearances, they wouldn't end up with two rather plain men. "What? Why did you suddenly lose your confidence?" Gu Ning asked provokingly. "It's none of your business." The woman in the black feather coat snapped in anger. "Well, I do agree with this, miss. True love won't care about material things," the man who was called Haoxuan said. "Right, honey?" He turned to the woman by his side. The woman's expression changed at once, but she couldn't deny it. "Baby, do you feel the same way?" the man called Yihua also asked the woman beside him. "Yes," the woman replied reluctantly. "Very well. I guess that we don't need to buy those expensive clothes, bags, and makeup, nor go to high-end restaurants and clubs anymore. True love has no price tag after all," Luoyihua said. In fact, they had already had the idea to change the women by their side, and they planned to dump them after buying them some stuff and king them tonight, but it seemed like they could directly dump them right now and save a lot of money. "Yihua," the woman said and played cute. She was obviously dissatisfied, but didn't dare to say it directly. "What, babe?" Luoyihua pretended that he didn't understand what was going on. The two women weren't dumb and they knew that the men were going to dump them. It wasn't the first time that they had played around with rich second-generation heirs, and they were aware that their relationship wouldn't last long, which was the reason why they seized every chance to let them pay the bills for them. However, once the men wanted to dump the women could do nothing to keep them or their wallets even if the women begged. Gu Ning had vented her anger at them and lost interest in arguing any longer. However, before she left, Gu Ning still intentionally showed off in front of the two women. She raised her left hand and the blood-red jade bracelet was bare in the air. "Didn't you say that my boyfriend is just a pretty boy? Take a look at this blood-red jade bracelet." A 46-gram blood-red jade bracelet was sold at the price of 48 million yuan at auction, while this one weighs heavier than that. It's worth at least 50 million yuan. Now do you still think that my boyfriend is merely a pretty boy? And my boyfriend has sent me many priceless jewels till now. All of them are worth at least 100 million yuan. I don't think that you're qualified to judge me." After that, Gu Ning left with Leng shouting, and the rest of the people were shocked still. At least 100 million yuan? Her boyfriend must be super rich. Many people had the same thought. At the same time, some doubted its authenticity. However, no matter what, the two women were quite jealous of Gu Ning now. They wished that they had such a super rich as well as handsome boyfriend. "I think that she is just a materialistic girl too," the woman in the white feather coat said. "I agree," the woman in the black feather coat echoed. When they left the shopping mall, Leng shouting said to Gu Ning, "I don't actually care." "I do," Gu Ning said. She cared about others' attitude towards her boyfriend. Afterwards, Gu Ning and Leng shouting went to another male clothes store to shop for Jiangsu this time. Leng shouting paid the bill before Gu Ning without delay. As Gu Ning's boyfriend, he tried to show his kindness to her family. Although her family wouldn't know that he paid the bill, Gu Ning knew, which was enough. Gu Ning didn't stop him, because she knew that he was just being kind. Well, I'll buy some gifts for you family later as well. Although they won't know that I paid the bill, you know, which is enough. Ling Xiaoting sent her family gifts, so Gu Ning planned to do the same thing. Please just send a gift to my grandpa. Ling Xiaoting didn't reject, but he limited the range of his family. Sure, Gu Ning answered. She didn't ask further, because she knew that Ling Xiaoting didn't get along with the other members in the Ling family. Gu Ning then thought for a while about the gift that she was going to send Ling Xiaoting's grandpa. She thought of the antiques in her telepathic eyes space. Oh, does your grandpa like to collect antiques? Gu Ning asked Ling Xiaoting. Yes, Ling Xiaoting replied. Does he like ancient objects, paintings, or calligraphy? Gu Ning asked again. Calligraphy and paintings, Ling Xiaoting answered. Gu Ning immediately made her decision to send the Luo Shenfu, a piece of calligraphy written by Zhao Mingfu. During the following hours, they went to buy gifts for Gu Man, Gu Qing, Jiang Xingyue and Gu Ning. Ling Xiaoting paid all the bills and carried the bags. Gu Ning was willing to carry the shopping bags on her own, but Ling Xiaoting insisted on helping her. It was said that men hate shopping with women because it was so boring. However, Ling Xiaoting didn't feel bored at all, and they didn't leave until Gu Ning had shopped for well over an hour. On their way home, they went to buy some food ingredients and planned to cook at home. It was only 4:30 p.m. when they got home, so they decided to have a rest before cooking. During the break, Gu Ning went to a bedroom and took out Luo Shenfu from her telepathic eye space. She handed the calligraphy to Ling Xiaoting. I bought this from the antique street, and I think that it's a great New Year gift for your grandpa. It's a great New Year gift for grandpa, Ling Xiaoting said, correcting Gu Ning's sentence. What? Gu Ning didn't understand why Ling Xiaoting repeated her sentence. Find new stories on nov/elbin.com. It's grandpa, not your grandpa, Ling Xiaoting explained. In other words, he hoped that she would call his grandpa her grandpa too. Gu Ning realized what was on Ling Xiaoting's mind now, but she was telling the truth. They weren't married yet after all. Nonetheless, Gu Ning believed that Ling Xiaoting was her Mr. Right, and his grandpa would be hers one day in the future if everything went well, so she didn't reject. Fine, grandpa. Ling Xiaoting wore a satisfied smile, and his beautiful smile made Gu Ning's heart skip a beat. Ling Xiaoting didn't know much about ancient paintings and calligraphy, but he trusted Gu Ning's choice. After that, the two sat on the sofa watching TV. Gu Ning was on her period, so Ling Xiaoting didn't dare to kiss or touch her too often because he got turned on but couldn't have sex with her. Before long, Ling Xiaoting received an email with several choices for stores as well as office buildings written in it. Gu Ning immediately read the email. There were 5 choices for stores, and all of them had great locations. Its rent varied according to its location. Gu Ning liked the third one among the 5. In addition, she had 3 choices for office buildings. 2 of them were available for renting, and 1 was up for sale. However, the one which was for sale was a half-built, 18-story building that was 550 square meters in size. It was completely empty, without even having any doors or windows. The previous owner of that building had been found guilty of tax evasion and had run away with all the money, so the government confiscated it in the end. The housing price in the capital was extremely high, and that half-built office building cost at least hundreds of millions of yuan. For those who were rich, they already had their own office buildings, so it wasn't necessary for them to buy another. And for those who wanted to buy it, they couldn't afford it. Therefore, that building had been in the market for at least half a year without a buyer. However, Gu Ning decided to buy it. It wasn't far from the capital university and the store, so it would be convenient for her to commute between her university and her company. More importantly, it was only 2 kilometers away from the Tang family's company too. Thinking of the Tang family, there was a touch of hostility that flashed through her eyes. I think that the 3rd store and this half-built office building are great, Gu Ning said to Leng Xiaoting. Although it was shown in the survey that there was no problem with its quality, Gu Ning thought that it was better if she went to check it herself. That office building cost hundreds of millions of yuan after all. No problem, Leng Xiaoting said. He immediately called a subordinate and told them to pay the deposit. Without much trouble, Gu Ning got the store and office building that she wanted, so she was in a good mood. Si Ming and Qiu Yusin both really thought that the other was a great partner, so they went to dine and watch a movie together this afternoon. They had just met, and it took time to get to know each other well. Neither of them knew whether they would still like each other after they got to know each other a bit better. They weren't teenagers who treated relationships like a game anymore, and their aim was marriage. Therefore, they both took it seriously, no matter what the end result might be. The next morning, Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting went to look at the store and office building after breakfast. Gu Ning was satisfied with her choices and they went to buy the office building and rent the store afterwards. With Leng Xiaoting's powerful network, Gu Ning only spent 200 million yuan on the office building, which was much lower than the market price. In fact, Gu Ning could also acquire a piece of land from the government and build an office building herself to save more money, but it was hard to find a good piece of land and it took a long time to build an office building. After she got the office building and the store, Gu Ning went to register a new company. Its name was Fanghua Entertainment. With Leng Xiaoting's help, Gu Ning's problems were easily solved within days. "I'm so lucky to have you as my boyfriend. You've helped me a lot," Gu Ning said. Leng Xiaoting was happy to be complimented by Gu Ning. "I'm willing to help you. Don't you think that it's a bother?" Gu Ning asked. Actually, she thought that Leng Xiaoting had helped her too much, and she felt slightly guilty. At the same time, she had to admit that she needed his help badly. "I enjoy it," Leng Xiaoting said with sincerity. No matter how much of a bother it was, he enjoyed it as long as it could help Gu Ning. Gu Ning was deeply touched, and felt that she was blessed to meet Leng Xiaoting, who was so considerate and cared about her. "It's almost 12 p.m. What do you want for lunch?" Gu Ning asked. "Up to you," Leng Xiaoting said. Gu Ning took a glance around to see what they could choose. "There is a restaurant. Let's go and have a try," Gu Ning said. Up to TED Chapters NNVelben.com. "Sure," Leng Xiaoting replied, and then they walked to the restaurant. Since Gu Ning had already settled the store and the office building, her next step was to decorate and furnish them. There was a decoration company under Xinhua Real Estate, so Gu Ning directly called in Guangyao and told him that she had acquired an office building as well as a store. After the New Year festival, Guangyao would send people to decorate them. And Guangyao was greatly surprised by Gu Ning's efficiency. Luckily, Guangyao had hired many employees earlier on, so he was able to send a group of people to be in charge of the decoration in the capital. However, before decorating, they had to measure the size of the building and the store. Thus Guangyao would fly to the capital along with a designer tomorrow. Leng Xiaoting wanted to help Gu Ning, but Gu Ning could handle it herself, so he stayed quiet. After the meal, Gu Ning said to Leng Xiaoting, "Xiaoting, if you have anything to deal with, you can leave as you like. You don't need to keep my company all day." Leng Xiaoting was upset and felt hurt. "Don't you want me to be with you?" Gu Ning instantly explained, "Of course I do. I just don't want to waste your time in case you have something important to deal with." Hearing that, Leng Xiaoting relaxed. "Don't worry. I'll leave if I really have business to deal with, but I'm free now." Great! Then let's go to the antique street later, Gu Ning said. The antique street in the capital was much bigger than that in City Tang, and it was highly possible for Gu Ning to get real antiques. After they left the restaurant, Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting went straight to the antique street. The antique street in the capital was full of activity and visitors. Gu Ning walked around it and got 5 real antiques in the end. 2 of them were worth hundreds of thousands of yuan each, while another 2 was worth around 2 million yuan each, and the last one was worth over 10 million yuan. Let's go to the street of stone gambling now, Gu Ning said after they finished touring around the antique street. The street of stone gambling in the capital was also very large, but it was still barely comparable with that in City Tang, because City Tang was a base for jade raw materials anyway. Does Grandpa like jade? Gu Ning asked Leng Xiaoting. Yes, but he only likes high-level and top-level jade, Leng Xiaoting said plainly. Gu Ning beamed and said, very well, then I'll send some top-level jade to him. Great! Leng Xiaoting understood that it was easy for Gu Ning to cut out high-quality jade, so he didn't stop her. Meanwhile, he felt proud of his girlfriend. Gu Ning visited many raw materials shops and finally found one with top-level jade inside. Other than that, she also got 2 raw materials which contained high-level jade. Although there were many pieces of top-level jade in her telepathic eye space, she couldn't take them out in front of Leng Xiaoting, so she could only search for some at the street of stone gambling. Gu Ning later requested a worker in the shop to cut out the raw material with the top-level jade inside. The raw material wasn't big, it was the size of a man's fist, but its outer layer was thin, and it only needed rubbing. Whenever there was a worker who was cutting out a raw material, there was a group of onlookers surrounded him. It's green inside. More people gathered around the worker after he announced that there was green in the raw material. Someone bid the minute that the green showed, but was stopped by Gu Ning. Sorry, I have no intention to sell this jade. It's a New Year gift for the older generation. Since the owner didn't want to sell it, others couldn't force her to do so. However, a woman suddenly said acidly, "Gee, a New Year gift for the older generation? It isn't certain that there is jade inside yet. Don't jump to conclusions." The woman was in her early 20s and dressed in designer brands, but did not look stylish at all. Gu Ning retorted, "It's none of your business." So what? I've already said it, the woman said with disdain. However, the woman was immediately terrified when Leng Xiaoting gave her a cold, sharp glance. She shut her mouth without delay and didn't dare to utter another word. Gu Ning wasn't bored enough to argue with her, so she ignored the woman. The woman felt humiliated and played cute in front of a middle-aged man beside her. Honey? Honey? Gu Ning was surprised and realized their relationship at once. The middle-aged man must be the woman's sugar daddy. Everyone looked to the woman with disdain now, because she was a mistress at such a young age. Be quiet, or you can just leave right now, the man snapped in anger. He actually didn't care about other people's opinions, but was displeased that the woman interrupted the process of cutting the raw material. The woman was struck speechless from fear. With its outer layer being removed little by little, the jade appeared in full scale. It was dark green and looked so beautiful. Jesus! It's the king's green, the worker raised his voice in excitement. Everyone around him also drew a long breath in, and couldn't believe their eyes. The king's green was the king of jade. However, Gu Ning got a piece of it so easily. Everyone was jealous of her now, and they all wished that they could have the king's green. Gu Ning knew that there was top-level jade in it, but didn't know that it was the king's green, so she was also surprised to see it. Nevertheless, it was a perfect gift for Master Leng. Many people came to the shop after they heard the news, but they were all disappointed that Gu Ning wouldn't sell it. Gu Ning paid the fee for cutting the raw material and quickly left with Leng Xiaoting. Everyone could only watch them disappearing from sight. The king's green was worth at least 100 million yuan. However, the news also attracted some bad people's attention. With the priceless jade in her hands, Gu Ning was in a dangerous situation. The minute that they left the shop, they felt that some people were stalking them. However, they ignored them, walking straight to the parking lot. There were many people on the street, so the bad men didn't have chance to attack Gu Ning. They planned to grab the jade from Gu Ning when they were in the parking lot. However, Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting walked to a Hummer, which shocked the bad guys. The car was extremely expensive, and its owner must be either super rich or powerful, so those bad guys hesitated. Meanwhile, they were reluctant to miss the king's green, which was worth at least 100 million yuan. Therefore, they made up their mind to take the risk. 100 million yuan wasn't much to Gu Ning, but it was a fortune to ordinary people. Full 0W current novels on n/o/v/3l/b in.co/m. There were few people in the parking lot, so the bad men directly ran at Leng Xiaoting and Gu Ning when they were about to get in the car. However, before they could attack them, Leng Xiaoting punched them first. Within several movements, the three men were kicked away. To their astonishment, they failed before they even began to attack Gu Ning. The three men were moaning in great pain on the ground, and they now realized that they had made a terrible mistake. They were scared by Leng Xiaoting and eager to escape away. Unfortunately, they could barely stand up. Leng Xiaoting didn't bother to waste time on them, so he got in the car and drove away without hesitation. Both Leng Xiaoting and Gu Ning weren't affected by what just had happened. "We need to find a good box to pack it up before sending to Y Grandpa," Gu Ning said. She almost said your grandpa again, but changed it at once. "I think that it's too expensive. Can't we prepare another gift?" Although Leng Xiaoting understood that Gu Ning didn't lack jade at all, the top-level jade was too rare. He wanted her to think about it twice. "Don't worry, this isn't the first time that I've cut out the king's green," Gu Ning said. Since she promised that she would send his grandpa top-level jade, she would fulfill her promise. No matter how expensive it was, she was willing to send it to his grandpa. But Leng Xiaoting still hesitated. The king's green was too expensive after all. 100 million yuan was nothing to him either, but it was too much for a gift. "Well, if we get married one day, we'll share our properties and wealth. What is mine is yours," Gu Ning said. She had no intention to take Leng Xiaoting's properties as her own, but she wanted to comfort him. Hearing what Gu Ning had just said, Leng Xiaoting was cheered up at once. He didn't mind Gu Ning taking his properties as her own at all. "Well, then I'll take the gift on behalf of Grandpa." After that, they went back to the house. Before long, the news that someone had cut out the king's green went across the street of Stone Gambling. Many people were shocked as well as jealous. When it was time for dinner, Leng Xiaoting cooked for Gu Ning at the house. Gu Ning was on her period now, so Leng Xiaoting persuaded her to rest a bit more. Nevertheless, even if she wasn't on her period, he would still be willing to cook for her. Leng Xiaoting was a great cook, even better than Gu Ning. Up.dfrm no/v/e/lb/i/n.co/m. During the meal, Leng Xiaoting's phone rang all of a sudden. The caller was Su Jinchen. Su Jinchen invited them to attend an auction at 2 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. Gu Ning heard that and was excited. She asked Su Jinchen whether she would have a chance to put her objects up for the auction. In fact, Gu Ning just wanted to sell her ancient objects for fun, not for money. "Do you have antiques as well?" "What is it?" Su Jinchen asked with curiosity. Gu Ning thought for a second before she said, "An official kiln writing brush washer." She just wanted to attend the auction for fun, so she didn't want to put an object that was too expensive up for it. No problem, Su Jinchen answered with alacrity. He knew little about antiques, thus he didn't ask further about the official kiln-writing brush washer. At the auction, there was an appraiser who was responsible to evaluate the objects anyway. Of course, the appraisers weren't always right, so occasionally there would be replicas. Some of them looked so real, and many experts failed to tell the difference from real ones. However, before the auction, potential buyers could check the object themselves, and so they would be responsible for their own choice. The auction house didn't need to bear any responsibility, and its reputation wouldn't be damaged because that was the rule in this industry. A few minutes later, Master Ling called Ling shouting again, talking about the auction too. Master Ling was an antique lover, so he was interested in the auction. He asked Ling shouting whether he was free tomorrow to keep him company. There was one of Su Beihong's paintings at the auction, and he wanted to buy it. Ling shouting directly replied that he wasn't free tomorrow, because he was going to attend the auction with Gu Ning. However, he didn't tell his grandpa the reason. Otherwise, his grandpa would definitely come to meet them. To stop his grandpa from coming, Ling shouting said, "If you want the painting, I can buy it for you. It'll be crowded at the auction, so I think that it would be better if you stayed at home. I have to check it myself. What if it's fake?" "I don't want to waste money," Master Ling said. "Well, I can give you a better calligraphy than Su Beihong's painting, so you don't need to attend the auction," Ling shouting said. He was trying every method to stop Master Ling from coming. "Do you want Su Beihong's painting, or Zhao Menfu's Luo Shenfu?" Ling shouting asked. "What?" Master Ling was astonished and excited. "Are you sure that you have Luo Shenfu?" "Yes," Ling shouting said. With Ling shouting's affirmative answer, Master Ling was more than excited now. He couldn't wait to get it. "Give it to me right now. I promise that I'll bring it to you later." Since Ling shouting mentioned Luo Shenfu, he planned to send the gift to his grandpa today. Ling shouting understood his grandpa's personality well. If he didn't get the calligraphy, he wouldn't sleep at night, and Ling shouting didn't want his grandpa to stay up late. His grandpa was elderly after all. "When?" "No, you must bring it to me as soon as possible," Master Ling demanded. "I'm eating now, I'll bring it to you after that." "Great! Don't waste your time eating and bring it to me as quickly as you can," Master Ling urged. Ling shouting hung up the call and told Gu Ning he was going to leave for a while. Gu Ning heard the conversation between them and didn't mind. After the meal, Ling shouting went back to the Ling family's house with the calligraphy and the king's green in his hands. Gu Ning then sent messages to Lu Zhan and Duan Lisin, telling them that she had already settled the office building and the new company. Lu Zhan and Duan Lisin both relaxed after reading Gu Ning's message. From now on, they would work for Fanghua Entertainment. Of course, they needed to sign contracts first. In the Ling family's house, Master Ling was anxiously waiting for Ling shouting and told the housekeeper to check outside all the time to see whether Ling shouting was back home. It was past 7 p.m., so Ling Yuanqian's family and Ling Yuanqian's family were all in the house with Master Ling. They knew that Master Ling was restless because of Ling shouting, so Ling Yuanqian's family was displeased. In their eyes, Ling shouting was an outsider even though he was Master Ling's eldest grandson. "Grandpa, shouting just visited you yesterday. Why are you so excited now?" Ling Xiaoxuan asked with curiosity. Not only Ling Xiaoxuan, but everyone else was also curious. They had never seen Master Ling being so restless with excitement just because Ling shouting was coming back. "Shouting is going to give me the Luo Shenfu. It's a priceless calligraphy," Master Ling replied with happiness. He also didn't hide his appreciation towards Ling shouting, which made Ling Yuanqian's family feel dissatisfied. However, they had to admit that Leng Xiaoting was very able to get Zhao Mengfu's Luo Shenfu. They all knew that Master Leng was an antique lover, and everyone wanted to gain his favor. Unfortunately, it was so hard to find a real one nowadays even if you had enough money. I don't think that it's a big deal. It's just a valueless piece of calligraphy, Leng Xiaojia said with disdain. She was obviously annoyed. Xiaojia, mind your words. Leng Yuanqian criticized. They all knew that Master Leng was an antique lover, and her words would definitely anger Master Leng. Master Leng indeed was irritated, looking at Leng Xiaojia with strong dissatisfaction, and Leng Xiaojia immediately lowered her head in fear. She didn't dare to meet Master Leng's eyes. Master Leng had known about the attitude that the other members in the Leng family had towards Leng Xiaoting the entire time, but as long as they stayed in harmony and didn't attack each other, Master Leng wouldn't interfere. However, if anyone showed his or her animosity against another in front of him, he wouldn't ignore it. Was it so hard for them to get along with each other in harmony like a family? Leng Xiaoxuan couldn't tolerate that Leng Xiaojia had picked on Leng Xiaoting, who he admired. Xiaojia, we all know that Grandpa loves antiques, paintings and calligraphy. Why did you still say that it's valueless? Who are you aiming at, Xiaoting or Grandpa? Is something valueless if someone dislikes it? If so, then I think that your designs are valueless too. Leng Xiaojia was interested in clothing design. Although she was still unemployed at the moment, she had been designing clothes when she was not fooling around. Leng Xiaoxuan intentionally embarrassed Leng Xiaojia in front of their grandpa because Leng Xiaojia had found fault with Leng Xiaoting many times. Although she didn't dare to say it in front of Leng Xiaoting, she had often badmouthed him behind his back. Leng Xiaojia was mad, but couldn't say anything because of Master Leng's presence. In fact, Leng Yuanqian's family didn't get along with Leng Yuanqian's family either. Moreover, Leng Yuanqian's family believed that they should inherit the Leng family's wealth because Master Leng's eldest son had passed away. In that case, Leng Yuanqian's family was also a problem for Leng Yuanqian's family. Nevertheless, they all knew that a powerful family had to be a harmonious family. Thus, even though they didn't get along with each other, they would keep it a secret among them. Mind your words too. Leng Yuanqian criticized Leng Xiaoxuan. What Leng Xiaojia had said annoyed Master Leng, and he didn't want to see her anymore. Master Leng went back to his study and told Leng Changji to guide Leng Xiaoting straight to his study when he got there. Leng Xiaoting got there when it was just past 8 p.m. He greeted several of the elder family members before he went upstairs. Xiaoting, may I go with you? Leng Xiaoxuan asked. He was curious about the calligraphy too. I have something to talk to Grandpa about. If you want to have a look, you can go look in a while. Leng Xiaoting didn't want Leng Xiaoxuan to know about his relationship with Gu Ning, so he rejected. Fine, Leng Xiaoxuan said. Leng Xiaoting knocked on the door of the study, and Master Leng immediately went to open it. Without saying a word, Master Leng directly grabbed the calligraphy from Leng Xiaoting, but he did it lightly because he didn't want to damage it. He walked back to his table and unrolled the calligraphy before he began to evaluate its authenticity. It wasn't because Master Leng didn't believe Leng Xiaoting, but it was just a habit. In addition, it wasn't uncommon to see replicas nowadays, and it was possible that Leng Xiaoting bought a fake one. However, with Master Leng's rich knowledge and experience, he came to the conclusion that this calligraphy was real. His hands were trembling in excitement. Ha ha, ha ha. It's real. I did not expect that I could still collect such a valuable piece of calligraphy in my lifetime. Master Leng was more than thrilled now. I must show it to my old friends. They will be so jealous of me. Oh, where did you get it? Master Leng asked with curiosity. Ningning bought it from an antique street by accident. It's your New Year gift, Leng Xiaoting said plainly. His grandpa already knew that he had a girlfriend, so there was nothing to hide, but his grandpa didn't know his girlfriend's background yet. Without asking, Master Ling immediately realized who Ningning was. It must be his grandson's young girlfriend. However, Master Ling was shocked that Gu Ning had bought it by accident. "Your girlfriend is awesome," Master Ling complimented. There was a proud smile on Leng Xiaoting's lips when his grandpa complimented his girlfriend. Master Ling was amazed again to see Leng Xiaoting smiling because of Gu Ning. Master Ling understood that his grandson must have found his true love, so he was increasingly curious about his grandson's girlfriend now. At the same time, he had to admit that his grandson's girlfriend was very generous to send him such a valuable gift. Actually, Gu Ning's estimated price of Luotian Fu wasn't right. She thought that it was worth at least 8 million yuan, or over 10 million yuan at the most, but it was worth over 30 million yuan at least. If it was put up for auction, its price could be around 50 million yuan. Master Ling then hesitated. "Nevertheless, I think that this gift is too expensive." He didn't think that Gu Ning was trying to gain his favor him by sending such a valuable gift, but he believed that Gu Ning must be a smart girl from a rich family. However, the gift was indeed too expensive, and he felt uneasy taking it. "Actually, there is an even more expensive gift for you." Leng Xiaoting laid another gift on the table. Master Ling was struck dumb. A more expensive gift than Zhao Mingfu's calligraphy? "What is it?" Master Ling asked and reached out his hands to open it. Leng Xiaoting didn't answer his question, but let him find out for himself. Master Ling opened the wooden box and a piece of dark green jade came into his sight. He rounded his eyes in great shock. This, he was too astonished to say a word. Although he already had the answer, he wasn't sure. Master Ling took the jade out and had a closer look at it. "This is the king's green. How did you manage to get it?" "Ningning cut it out at the Street of Stone gambling today," Leng Xiaoting said. "What?" Master Leng was more than shocked now. Again? He had indeed heard the news that a girl had cut out a piece of king's green which was worth over 100 million yuan at the Street of Stone gambling a short while ago. Unexpectedly, the girl was Leng Xiaoting's girlfriend and his granddaughter-in-law to be. The king's green jade was worth over 100 million yuan, it could be worth far more than just 100 million yuan. Master Leng was short of words to describe his feelings now. "Xiaoting, your girlfriend is so incredible. She's able to pick out real antiques and cut out high-quality jade." Master Leng had thought that Leng Xiaoting had merely chosen a beautiful young girl, but to his surprise, the girl was really talented. "You'll find out more," Leng Xiaoting said. "Nevertheless, it's too expensive." Master Ling felt more uneasy this time. The king's green was worth over 100 million yuan after all. Over 100 million yuan wasn't much to the Ling family, but it was too expensive if it was just a gift. Even the Ling family wouldn't send a gift at that price to others. In fact, Gu Ning was just Leng Xiaoting's girlfriend and they hadn't gotten married yet. Therefore, Master Ling wasn't Gu Ning's family right now, but she was willing to send him such an expensive and rare gift. Master Ling was astonished by Gu Ning's generosity. "Please don't worry. It wasn't hard for her to cut out the king's green, and she won't take back what she has given away," Leng Xiaoting said, although he had the same thought as his grandpa. Since Leng Xiaoting said so, Master Ling could only take the gifts. "Well, let me send a gift back to her," Master Ling said, and was about to find something for Gu Ning, but was stopped by Leng Xiaoting. "Don't bother, please. I didn't tell her that you already know that I have a girlfriend, because she wants to keep it a secret for now. She told me to send you these 2 gifts under my name, but I didn't want to waste her kindness, so I told you the truth," Leng Xiaoting said. "What?" Hearing that, Master Ling was shocked. Unexpectedly, Gu Ning had no intention to let him know that she had prepared the two gifts for him. Master Ling believed that Leng Xiaoting wouldn't lie to him, so he now thought more highly of Gu Ning than ever. Leng Xiaoting didn't stay there very long. He left right after seeing Master Ling. It seemed like he really didn't take this house as his home. Other than Master Ling, who understood that Leng Xiaoting was in a hurry to get back to his girlfriend's side, the other members in the Ling family thought that he must be occupied with business in the military. Leng Xiaoting was an important figure in the military after all, and he must be busy especially at the end of the year. Leng Xiaoting didn't want anyone else in the Ling family to know that he had a girlfriend, so Master Ling promised to keep it between them. Master Ling was curious about Gu Ning, but Leng Xiaoting didn't allow him to investigate her, so he had to give up the idea. However, Leng Xiaoting even refused to tell him the girl's full name, which confused Master Ling, but if Leng Xiaoting didn't want to tell him, Master Ling couldn't force him to say it. After Leng Xiaoting left, Master Ling immediately called someone. "Hi, Master Jiang. I just got Zhao Mengfu's Luo Shenfu. Why don't you come over and have a look tomorrow?" Master Jiang's full name was Jiang Zhongyu. He was an old friend of Master Ling, and he had been the head of National Antiques Association before, so he naturally had great affection towards antiques. Although he was retired now, he was still influential in the antique industry. Hearing that, Jiang Zhongyu was excited. "What? Zhao Mengfu's Luo Shenfu? Really? You're a bad person that you call me now, but tell me to visit you tomorrow. How will I be able to sleep tonight?" "No, I'm coming right away, and you must stay awake and wait for me." Jiang Zhongyu of course couldn't wait till tomorrow. He walked out of his room quickly and shouted upstairs, "Jiang Ruining, get out here now." Jiang Zhongyu was already 70, but exercised a lot, so he was still full of energy. Within seconds, a handsome young man around 20 years old appeared at the stairs looking downwards. "Grandpa, what's wrong?" Jiang Zhongyu noticed that Jiang Ruining was still in his nightgown. "Change your clothes right now, and drive me to the Ling family's house." Read latest OVLS at nv/e/l/buy.com. "It's so late now. Why are you going to the Ling family's house?" Jiang Ruining asked. "Stop asking questions, you have only 2 minutes." Jiang Zhongyu ordered. Jiang Ruining immediately went back to his room and got changed. A minute later, he walked out again. Luckily, the Jiang family's house was just 2 streets away from the Ling family's house, so Jiang Zhongyu arrived after a few minutes. Ling Changji was waiting for Master Jiang at the door. Thus, the minute that Jiang Zhongyu arrived, they went to Master Ling's study. Jiang Ruining had to admit that his grandpa was a complete antique addict. It was a winter night, and he still came here without hesitation. Jiang Ruining had to follow his grandpa. In the living room, there was only Leng Xiaoxuan. Seeing Jiang Zhongyu, Leng Xiaoxuan greeted him with respect, but was ignored. Leng Xiaoxuan was already used to it, because he understood the reason why Jiang Zhongyu was here. Jiang Ruining had no interest in antiques at all, so he stayed in the living room watching TV with Leng Xiaoxuan. The New Year festival is around the corner. Will Xiaoting come back home? Jiang Ruining admired Leng Xiaoting as much as Leng Xiaoxuan did, and he had also been trained by Leng Xiaoting along with Leng Xiaoxuan. Although he couldn't compare with Leng Xiaoxuan, it wasn't difficult for him to defeat several ordinary men by himself. Xiaoting has come back these past 2 days, but he only stayed here for a few minutes. I have no idea why he's so busy. I think that he will probably come back home during the festival. Leng Xiaoxuan wasn't sure actually, because Leng Xiaoting didn't spend the New Year festival with them every year. In the study, Jiang Zhongyu asked Master Ling excitedly. "Where is Luo Shenfu? Let me have a look now." Saying that, Jiang Zhongyu went straight to the study desk and appreciated the Luo Shenfu placed on it. The next day, Guangyao and the others took the earliest flight at 7:20 a.m. and arrived at the capital around 10:30 a.m. Leng Xiaoting helped Gu Ning to arrange a car to pick them up, so Guangyao's group took the car and headed to Jinlin Hotel the moment that they left the airport. 50 minutes later, they arrived. Gu Ning was waiting for them in a private room, and they would dine together before going to the office building. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting were going to attend the auction at 2 p.m., so she ordered dishes beforehand. In that case, Guangyao's group could have the meal right when they arrived. "Nice to meet you, Miss Gu and Mr. Leng," Guangyao said. Because there were other people around, it wasn't convenient for Guangyao to call Gu Ning his boss. There was a secretary, Zhang Xuanjie, and a designer, Wu Mingkai, along with an assistant designer and 2 surveyors that came to the capital with Guangyao. "Miss Gu, Mr. Leng, it's so nice to meet you," the others greeted them. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting were their clients, so they had great respect and politeness towards them. Zhang Xuanjie, on the other hand, was aware that Gu Ning was their big boss, so he behaved himself the entire time. Gu Ning invited them to have a seat around the table afterwards. During the meal, they didn't discuss much about work. Gu Ning had already written down her thoughts and blueprints for the office building, and Guangyao would be in charge of the rest of the work. It was an 18-story office building, so the reception undoubtedly would be on the first floor, while the chairman's office would be on the 18th floor. As for departments, they were going to set up finance, human resources, marketing, information, and securities departments. The office building was 550 square meters in size, and there were 3 departments on each floor along with a bathroom and a pantry. The canteen would occupy a floor, while meeting rooms were on another. Fanghua Entertainment was directly set up at the headquarters of the group, occupying the 7th, 8th, and 9th floors. The 7th floor was to be a dance studio, the 8th floor was to be recording studios, and the 9th floor were the offices for Fanghua Entertainment's staff. There would be plenty of empty space in the 18-story office building temporarily, because it wasn't the appropriate time for Gu Ning to merge all her companies. In that case, Gu Ning decided to decorate the floors as planned, and the rest of the empty space would wait till they were being used. Guangyao was surprised to hear about Fanghua Entertainment. To his astonishment, Gu Ning was going to be involved in the entertainment industry. Because of Xinhua Real Estate and Jade Beauty Jewelry, Guangyao had no doubt about Gu Ning's ability. He admired Gu Ning more than ever because she was able to establish her business empire at such a young age. Check out LTSTVL on novl/bin.cm. They all knew that Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting had something else to deal with, so they finished the meal within half an hour. After that, they left for the office building. The capital wasn't only large, but also had heavy traffic, so they didn't arrive until half an hour later. Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting were going to attend the auction, so they left in another direction. The auction was held in the downtown, and the host was the biggest auction company in the capital. Many celebrities were invited. Not every attendee was an antique lover. Many came here to expand their network, while some seized the chance to show off his wealth. At the same time, not everyone who had been invited would show up, because some had no interest and some of those with a higher social status didn't bother to come. When Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting stopped the car in the parking lot, they met Su Jinchen's group who were waiting for them. Chen Meng, Si Ming, Chiu Yusin and Su Qining came along with Su Jinchen. "Hi, Xiaoting, Gu Ning." They greeted Leng Xiaoting and Gu Ning. Gu Ning also greeted them politely, while Leng Xiaoting only nodded lightly. They were already used to Leng Xiaoting's style, so they didn't think that it was impolite. "Gu Ning, I heard that you are putting up an antique for this auction. Could you please show it to us now?" Chen Meng and the others were all surprised when they heard that Gu Ning was going to sell an antique, so Chen Meng couldn't wait to ask her when she came. Yes, but I am just selling it for fun. I'm not actually an antique lover, Gu Ning said, and took out the official kiln writing brush washer from her backpack. None of them knew much about antiques, so they couldn't tell how precious this washer was. They only came here because they were invited and wanted to gather together. Let's get inside now. It's about to begin. It was already 1:30 p.m., and Gu Ning had to take the official kiln writing brush washer to be appraised first, so it was time for them to go inside. In the hall, everyone was chatting and shaking hands with one another. However, when Leng Xiaoting and the others walked inside, they became the focus and attracted a lot of attention. Not because many people recognized them, but because of their outstanding appearance. Wow, those men are so handsome. Yes. I think the beauties are attractive. I agree, especially the taller one. She has the perfect body. Both women and men in the hall were busy appreciating them. Leng Xiaoting and the other men were handsome as well as muscular. However, although Gu Ning's face was prettier than Qiu Yusin, her body and height couldn't compare with Qiu Yusin's. Qiu Yusin was a mature woman after all, and dressed in a sexy and stylish way. She was the most noticeable one among them, while Gu Ning looked like a student and didn't attract much attention. However, Gu Ning didn't care, and Leng Xiaoting didn't want other men to stare at his girlfriend either. Su Qinin was charming too, but still wasn't comparable with Qiu Yusin. Isn't she the daughter of the Su family? Do you mean the super-rich Su family? Yes, she's the daughter of Master Su's second son, and is called Su Qinin. And I think that I've seen the tall woman somewhere before. She looks so familiar. Must be on a magazine cover, because she's a well-known model domestically. Oh, it's her. Now I know why she looks so familiar. She's so sexy and even more beautiful than the pictures in the magazines. Both Qiu Yusin and Su Qinin were familiar faces to them. As a daughter of the Su family, Su Qinin had many opportunities to attend high-end events. And Qiu Yusin, who was a well-known model who was often shown on the screen, so many people were familiar with her face. Most of people around complimented them, but some had the opposite opinions. Even though she's beautiful and sexy, she's just selling her appearance for money, a woman said with disdain. Apparently, she was super jealous of Qiu Yusin. The woman was good-looking and stylish and around 27 years old, but barely comparable to Qiu Yusin. It was understandable that she was so green with envy. Exactly. I think that she must be the mistress of one of the men. I agree, otherwise she wouldn't have the chance to be here, two other women of the same age echoed to please the first woman. In fact, few people knew Qiu Yusin's family background. Otherwise, none of them would dare to badmouth her. Qiu Yusin didn't care about them, because she was already used to it. People who worked in the entertainment industry had to face attacks from onlookers. She had been through verbal attacks on the internet before, and wasn't afraid of those unkind comments. Si Ming, on the other hand, was displeased. He gave the three women a cold and sharp glance, and they were terrified at once. Do you have any proof of what you've just said? Or is it your manner to slander others in public? Do you know that according to the laws, you have to take responsibility if you damage a celebrity's reputation by slandering them? Si Ming said coldly. The three women's expressions changed with fear. Although Si Ming intentionally threatened them, he was telling the truth. In addition, those women were just jealous of Qiu Yusin and had no evidence of what they had just said. Si Ming didn't bother to waste time on them, because it wasn't a big deal after all. He had already warned them, and it wouldn't be appropriate if he continued in this public gathering. However, right at that moment, a woman said acidly, "Oh, since when has selling one's body been nobler than sell one's appearance?" Saying that, a woman who was about 34 years old walked over. She had an air of great elegance with a beautiful face. The alluring smile on her lips showed her special charm and attracted a lot of attention from the men around her. The woman seemed well-educated with good manners and was much more charming than those sexy or stylish women, because she was born elegant. However, what she had just said aroused people's curiosity. Apparently, she aimed at the woman who had badmouthed Xiao Yusen. Therefore, it was possible that the woman had sold her body for money. All of a sudden, people all looked at the woman differently. Although it wasn't uncommon that a woman sold her body for money among super-rich families, it was humiliating if the dirty secret was exposed in public. However, the woman wasn't in the mood to care about others' opinions towards her because she was totally shocked by the woman who suddenly appeared in front of her eyes. Are you Zhao Shiyuan? It was so hard for her to believe that this elegant charming woman was Zhao Shiyuan. Zhao Shiyuan had been a fat and ugly woman before, but now. Although it was unbearable, the woman was sure that she had to be Zhao Shiyuan. She had to admit that Zhao Shiyuan was truly beautiful and stunning now, which made her feel jealous and uneasy. What? We just haven't met for 2 years. So how come Miss Zhang fails to recognize me? Oh, Miss Zhang successfully stole my husband from me 2 years ago, so now I should call you Mrs. Yang, right? Zhao Shiyuan said plainly. Everyone was shocked. The woman was indeed a mistress and had ruined Zhao Shiyuan's marriage. However, the woman was hardly comparable to Zhao Shiyuan, even though she was much younger. Zhao Shiyuan's ex-husband was Yang Jianping, who was the vice president of a famous company and had over 100 million yuan of wealth. They had gotten married 7 years ago when Yang Jianping had just been a department manager. And Yang Jianping earned his later achievements step by step during the following years. However, once he was rich, their marriage was on the edge of crisis. The most up-to-date novels are published on n0velgen.co/m. Zhao Shiyuan had given birth to her daughter 5 years ago and became a housewife afterwards. It was exhausting to take care of a baby, so she had no time to look after herself. When she had gained a lot of weight, her husband had abandoned her. Zhang Jejia had become Yang Jianping's mistress 3 years ago. Yang Jianping had then divorced Zhao Shiyuan 2 years ago. She had gotten 10 million yuan and her daughter. Zhao Shiyuan hadn't tried to save their marriage because she had been badly hurt. After the divorce, she had used the money to invest. Although she wasn't very rich now, she had earned enough money to live a good life. Zhang Jejia was greatly embarrassed and wanted to escape. Meanwhile, a man in a suit who was around 37 years old walked over. He was obviously stunned when he noticed Zhao Shiyuan and couldn't believe his eyes. Zhao Shiyuan? It's been ages, my ex-husband. Zhao Shiyuan looked at the man with an elegant smile, but there was animosity in her eyes. The man had stabbed her deeply in her heart before. Yang Jianping opened his mouth, but didn't know what to say. Zhao Shiyuan already attracted all his attention. In fact, Zhao Shiyuan had always been a great beauty, but her body had changed just after she gave birth to a baby. Seeing that Yang Jianping was attracted to Zhao Shiyuan, Zhang Jejia was furious. She pulled Yang Jianping with great force, but was ignored, which made her really angry. Zhao Shiyuan wore a cold smile and said to Yang Jianping, "Sorry, I have something else to deal with." After that, Zhao Shiyuan left directly. Shiyuan! Yang Jianping wanted to stop her, but was pulled back by Zhang Jejia. Zhao Shiyuan noticed that, but ignored them, walking straight backstage. Yang Jianping, what are you doing? Zhang Jejia was mad. Yang Jianping knew that he shouldn't have acted like that, so he didn't argue with her, but he had to admit that Zhao Shiyuan had stolen his heart. He and Zhao Shiyuan had gotten married after they had been in love for 3 years, and they had affection towards each other, but men were visual animals. When Zhao Shiyuan's appearance changed, he had been reluctant to bring her to attend all kinds of gatherings. Moreover, once he had become rich, he had entered a different social cycle. Many of the men around him had mistresses, and he had failed to resist the temptation, which resulted in the divorce with Zhao Shiyuan. In the beginning, he had felt guilty, but every time that he saw Zhao Shiyuan's fat body, he felt disgusted again. Gradually, he lost the sense of guilt. In fact, he had turned to Zhang Jejie just for fun, but he had gotten tired of arguing with Zhao Shiyuan all the time, so he had finally made the decision to get divorced. After the drama, Chen Meng and the others found their seats and went to sit down, while Su Jingchen guided Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting to the appraiser. After the appraisal, the official kiln writing brush washer was proved to be real, and it was qualified to be put up for the auction. However, it was brought in really late, so it would be the last thing to be shown at the auction. Gu Ning didn't care about that, because she just wanted to sell it for fun. When they went back to the hall, Gu Ning's gaze accidentally fell on a man and a woman. All of a sudden, her eyes were full of animosity and coldness. The man and the woman were Qi Ziyue and Tang Yaxin. They were chatting with others. "What's wrong?" Leng Xiaoting and Su Jingchen asked Gu Ning when they noticed her sudden emotional change. Gu Ning immediately went back to normal. "Nothing, I just saw two people that I hate." Gu Ning had thought about her reaction when she met Tang Yaxin and Qi Ziyue countless times before. She had thought that she could stay calm, but actually she couldn't, and all she wanted to do was kill them. Leng Xiaoting and Su Jingchen didn't ask further, but they knew that it couldn't be that simple, because it seemed like Gu Ning wanted to kill someone. Qi Ziyue also sensed the cold glance, which was full of hatred, but when he turned to search for it, he found nothing. "What's wrong?" Tang Yaxin asked. "Nothing." Qi Ziyue couldn't figure it out, so he could only say that it was nothing. At this time, celebrities were seated one after another because the auction was about to begin. All the tables in the hall were round, and there were 3 of them in a row. Each table had seating available for 6 people to sit together, but there were 7 people in the group of Gu Ning, so there was a seat added at their round table. The seats were arranged according to the attendees' social status. As the young lord of a well-known super-rich family in the capital, Su Jingchen of course occupied one of the best positions. He and all his friends sat on the right side of the room in the second row. Experts and senior officials all sat in the first row, and other senior officials along with super-rich families sat in the second row. However, very few of the very senior officials and super-rich families would come. The Tang family was arranged at the left side of the room in the third row, so there was a distance between them and Gu Ning. Gu Ning didn't want to think about Tang Yaxin and Qi Ziyue, so she intentionally sat with her back towards them. However, she couldn't control her thoughts and couldn't help thinking about them. Luckily, they didn't notice her yet. Explore new ovals on nvelby.com. Before long, Gu Ning was attracted by an object shown at the auction. There were many things which could be put up for auction, like antiques, real estate, stores and so forth. What attracted Gu Ning's attention was the 9th object, which was the Shangyun Antique Store. As it was described, this antique store was located at the Antique Street with a great location. Shangyun Antique Store had a history of over 70 years, so it gained great fame in the capital. However, the owner of Shangyun Antique Store had just lost his wife and son in a car accident. He felt great grief and lost his appetite for running the store, so he put it up for auction. Gu Ning thought that it would be better if she had her own antique store, because there were many real antiques in her telepathic eye space. Although she had only found a dozen real antiques till now, it wasn't necessary to sell only real antiques in an antique store. Many people would love to buy replicas too, because the price was much lower. Therefore, Gu Ning made up her mind to bid for Shangyun Antique Store. The store wasn't small, and was 86 square meters in size. It consisted of 2 facades with 2 floors, and the owner was selling it along with its foundation property. At 2 p.m., the auction began. A sexy, mature woman in a red split cheongsam walked onto the stage. Many people immediately recognized her. She was precisely Zhao Shiyuan, who had argued with Zhang Jejie just then. Seeing Zhao Shiyuan, Yang Jianping fixed his eyes on her body. Zhang Jejie was mad and pinched him heavily, but Yang Jianping still focused on Zhao Shiyuan and ignored Zhang Jejie. Zhang Jejie was furious but didn't dare to make more noise. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to today's auction. I'm Zhao Shiyuan, the chief auctioneer of the Dedian Auction Company. Zhao Shiyuan stopped for a second before continuing. There are supposed to be 12 objects on the list today, but we just added a new one. It's an official kiln writing brush washer from the Song dynasty, so we have 13 objects that are all open for bid today. An official kiln writing brush washer? Everyone was shocked, because it was highly valuable. Especially those who loved calligraphy, they had natural fondness towards the 4 treasures of study, so many of them were ready to bid for it. All right, now let's bid for the first object. When the first object was shown on the stage, the potential buyers all went to have a look in an orderly manner. However, more people stayed at their seats. Dedian Auction Company was the largest auction company in the capital, and all of the objects shown at today's auction were expensive. Only 2 or 3 of them were worth less than several million yuan, and most were worth over 10 million yuan. There were even 2 objects which were worth over 100 million yuan. The 6th auction item to be auctioned is Su Beihong's The Injured Lion. This picture was created in 1938, when invaders from country R occupied most of our country. Our country was mourning, and our people suffered. Su Beihong was in great grief and anger when he painted the injured lion. The lion in the painting looks back and contains infinite depth of meaning. He wrote on the back of the painting, "When our country was in trouble, I met Mr. Lin Ruo and his guests. I painted this to express my sadness." This painting is a combination of realism and romanticism. Our country is known as the Sleeping Lion of the East, and it had been invaded by country R. Afterwards, the sleeping lion had become a wounded male lion. From the painting we can see that the injured lion that is glaring backwards is ready to fight. Speaking of that, everyone shared the same hatred against country R. The grudge between this county and country R could never be solved. The starting price for the injured lion is 5 million yuan, and the minimum edition is 1 million yuan. Now let's begin. The minute that Zhao Shiyuan finished, many started to raise their paddles to bid. Ling Xiaoting also had to buy this painting of Su Beihong for his grandpa. Coincidentally, Tang Yaxin was one of the bidders for the painting. Ling Xiaoting didn't raise his paddle yet, because he planned to wait for the end. Number 39, 12 million yuan. Number 57, 13 million yuan. Number 62, 26 million yuan. Number 62 was Tang Yaxin. At this moment, nobody followed, and it was time for Ling Xiaoting to raise his paddle. Number 32, 29 million yuan. Number 32 was Ling Xiaoting. Tang Yaxin was determined to win the injured lion, but to her surprise, number 32 suddenly joined the bidding. Nevertheless, it was the rule that the most generous buyer got the auction item, so she couldn't stop him. A few rounds later, Tang Yaxin's face started to change, because number 32 had no intention to stop. Ling Xiaoting raised his paddle without delay, as if he didn't care about money at all. Tang Bingsen had ordered Tang Yaxin to buy this painting as a gift for an important figure, but now it seemed hard for her to fulfill her assignment. A few rounds later, Tang Yaxin had to give up, because its price was 38 million yuan now. She knew that it was almost the highest price of the painting, and it wasn't worth making a higher bid. Although the Tang family didn't lack money, they didn't want to lose it either. In the end, Ling Xiaoting got the injured lion at the price of 38 million yuan. Gu Ning of course was happy to see Tang Yaxin fail. Ling Xiaoting unconsciously helped her revenge herself. Before long, the 9th auction item, Shangyun Antique Store, was ready for bidding. Shangyun Antique Store is the 9th auction item, Zhao Shiyuan said. It's a well-known antique store with 70 years of history in the capital. If its owner's family hadn't been killed in a terrible accident, its owner wouldn't put it up for auction. In other words, accidents are unpredictable, so we have to cherish the ones we love. Never regret in case you lose them. Saying that, Zhao Shiyuan stopped for a second, and there was sadness in the air. People were all touched by her description. Young Jianping asked himself, "Do I regret?" He indeed regretted now, but he would probably make the same decision if he went back to 2 years ago, because he still disliked the Zhao Shiyuan from then. Soon, Zhao Shiyuan opened her mouth again. "All right, there are 583 objects in Shangyun Antique Store. 7 are real, 23 are replicas, and the rest are all crafts. Its starting price is 20 million yuan and the minimum edition is 1 million. Let's begin." The prices of the 7 real antiques in Shangyun Antique Store varied, but the foundation property of Shangyun Antique Store was worth at least 10 million yuan, so its starting price couldn't be low. Number 48, 21 million yuan. Number 62, 22 million yuan. Gu Ning would also wait for the end. Number 56, 33 million yuan. When nobody followed up, Gu Ning started to raise her paddle. When Gu Ning raised her paddle, Ling Xiaoting and the others looked at her confused, but no one asked why she did it. Number 31, 34 million yuan. Number 56, 35 million yuan. Number 31, 36 million yuan. Number 31, 46 million yuan. Follow the latest novels n/velbin.com. In the end, Gu Ning acquired Shangyun Antique Store at the price of 46 million yuan. And the auction went on. Finally, it was time to bid for the last auction item. All right, we've successfully sold the previous 12 auction items, and now it's time to show the last auction item, the official kiln writing brush washer from the Song dynasty. The minute that Zhao Shiyuan finished, the official kiln writing brush washer was placed at the front. Great, now it's time to bid for this official kiln writing brush washer from Song dynasty. Its starting price is 2 million yuan, and the minimum edition is 500,000 yuan. Let's begin. Many people raised their paddles without delay. Number 3, 2.5 million yuan. Number 26, 3 million yuan. Number 2, 12 million yuan. 12 million yuan going once, 12 million yuan going twice. Any more bids? 12 million yuan going thrice. Sold. Zhao Shiyuan announced, "Congratulations. Number 2 gets the washer." The official kiln writing brush washer wasn't one of the most expensive items among the auction items. The most expensive one was sold at the price of over 100 million yuan. The auction finished after Zhao Shiyuan made a short closing speech. "Come on, let's go dine at the Fonlin Mountain Villa." "I already made the reservation yesterday," Su Jinchen said. There were many famous restaurants under the name of the Su family, but Su Jinchen wanted to take Gu Ning to a new place. In addition, Fonlin Mountain Villa was located halfway up the mountain and had a beautiful view. However, before they left, Gu Ning and Ling Xiaoting went backstage to finish the procedures first. "If you need any help, just tell me." Ling Xiaoting wouldn't ask Gu Ning about her history, but he was willing to help her whenever she needed it. "Thanks," Gu Ning said. After that, Ling Xiaoting received Master Ling's call. His grandpa asked him whether he had gotten the injured lion yet. Hearing that Ling Xiaoting had already bought it, Master Ling relaxed and reminded Ling Xiaoting to bring it to him once Ling Xiaoting was free. When Gu Ning and the others arrived at the parking lot, they watched another drama, in which a man was chasing a woman, while another woman was chasing the man. The roles in the drama were precisely Zhao Shiyuan, Yang Jianping and Zhang Jejia. Yang Jianping was chasing Zhao Shiyuan, while Zhang Jejia tried to pull Yang Jianping back, swearing loudly, "Yang Jianping, what the hell are you doing? Do you care about my feelings at all?" Because of Zhang Jejia, Yang Jianping couldn't catch up to Zhao Shiyuan, and he was mad. "Zhang Jejia, let me go!" Zhang Jejia was pushed away and almost fell, but Yang Jianping ignored her, which irritated her greatly. Yang Jianping. Follow the latest novels n/velbin.com. Without Zhang Jejia pulling him back, Yang Jianping immediately ran to Zhao Shiyuan and stopped her begging, "Shiyuan, can we talk?" "I don't think that there is anything for us to talk about," Zhao Shiyuan said. "Shiyuan." Yang Jianping was helpless. At this moment, he missed their good old days so much. Zhang Jejia followed him up and stood between Yang Jianping and Zhao Shiyuan, as if she was going to defend her man and their marriage. "Zhao Shiyuan, you've already divorced Jianping. Why can't you disappear from our sight?" Zhao Shiyuan felt like laughing. "Zhang Jejia, are you dumb or something? I work for Dedian Auction Company and it's my duty to host the auction. In addition, it's your husband who is standing in my way now, not me." In fact, Zhao Shiyuan had the thought of showing up in front of them and getting revenge on them, but today was truly a coincidence. Zhang Jejia was struck dumb, because Zhao Shiyuan was telling the truth. However, once Zhao Shiyuan appeared, Yang Jianping directly ignored her. And Zhang Jejia blamed Zhao Shiyuan for that. "Yang Jianping, come home with me now." Zhang Jejia pulled Yang Jianping to leave, but Yang Jianping got rid of her. "Enough. I just want to talk with Shiyuan." Yang Jianping said that like he was being serious, but no one believed him. "You're already divorced. There is nothing to talk about between you two." Zhang Jejia wasn't an idiot. It was quite obvious that Yang Jianping fell in love with Zhao Shiyuan again when Zhao Shiyuan had shown up in his sight. If they got along with each other again, Zhang Jejia would probably be abandoned. And Zhao Shiyuan was much more beautiful now. It was impossible that Yang Jianping could remain calm. "Couldn't we talk about Yeye? Yeye is my daughter." Yang Jianping snapped at Zhang Jejia. Hearing that, both Zhao Shiyuan and Zhang Jejia wanted to laugh. "Yang Jianping, stop acting. Don't you think it's disgusting? You never cared about Yeye in the last 2 years, and we signed the agreement when we got divorced." "Yeye has nothing to do with you," Zhao Shiyuan said. Yang Jianping was really a man without basic moral standards. He had cheated on his wife and had even abandoned his wife along with his daughter. Shiyuan, Yang Jianping tried to defend himself, but failed, because he also knew that Zhao Shiyuan was telling the truth. "I am warning you to not follow me anymore. Otherwise, I'll call the police." Zhao Shiyuan turned around walking away. "Shiyuan!" Yang Jianping wanted to chase up, but was stopped by Zhang Jejia. "Yang Jianping, she doesn't want to talk to you. Why can't you stop being so shameless?" With a loud sound, Yang Jianping suddenly slapped Zhang Jejia in the face. His bloodshot eyes stared at Zhang Jejia like she was his enemy. "It's none of your business." After that, Yang Jianping left Zhang Jejia alone and went straight to his car. He made up his mind to contact Zhao Shiyuan another day. Zhang Jejia was struck dumb by the slap. It was beyond her imagination that Yang Jianping would beat her. Gu Ning and the others were standing aside watching the drama. They stayed, not because they were bored, but because they were worried about Zhao Shiyuan. Su Jinchen and the other men were all military officers with principles. They wouldn't allow innocent people to be hurt. Seeing that Zhao Shiyuan handled it well herself, they didn't interfere, but they all felt great sympathy for her. After the drama, Si Ming said acidly, "Well, he is shameless enough for cheating on his wife and abandoning his wife along with his daughter, but he even slapped a woman just then. He's a shame to men. Are you sure that you wouldn't do the same things?" Chiu Yusin asked with doubt. Hearing that, Si Ming got nervous and immediately said seriously, "Of course I wouldn't." "Ha, nobody knows. People may change." Chiu Yusin wasn't finding fault with Si Ming, but she lacked confidence in men after she had seen a lot. However, it didn't mean that she refused to fall in love, get married, or give birth to babies. Instead, she wanted to try and live her life. Exactly, people may change, like shouting. Su Jinchen wanted to use Leng Shouting as an example, because Leng Shouting had always stayed away from women, but he suddenly fell in love with Gu Ning and loved her a lot. However, before Su Jinchen could finish, Leng Shouting gave him a cold glance. Su Jinchen immediately changed what he wanted to say. I believe that Shouting would never do such immoral things, but I doubt that other men could be the same." Su Jinchen aimed at Si Ming on purpose. Si Ming was displeased and retorted, "Su Jinchen, how could you say that? You must know me well since we've been close friends for so long." "Exactly, because I know you so well, I can't promise that you won't do the same things." Su Jinchen deliberately annoyed Si Ming, then turned to others. "All right, it's already 4:30 p.m. Let's leave for the Fenglin Mountain Villa. It's a bit far and it'll be terrible if we get caught by the rush hour." Su Jinchen. Si Ming was mad, but no one comforted him. Gu Ning and Leng Shouting drove in the same car, Si Ming and Chen Meng shared another one, and Su Jinchen, Su Qining along with Chiu Yusin drove another one. Once they were in the car, Leng Shouting said seriously to Gu Ning, "Ning, I promise I'll never cheat on you, or ever beat or abandon you." Gu Ning was struck dumb. They were just joking, but Leng Shouting took it seriously. Gu Ning wanted to comfort him, but suddenly changed her mind and teased him. "Who knows? You previously said that you have no interest in dating or a relationship, but now you have me as your girlfriend." Gu Ning said what Su Jinchen didn't dare to say previously. Leng Shouting immediately explained, "It's because you're the girl that I want." "Maybe you'll say the same thing to another girl," Gu Ning said. "I won't," Leng Shouting promised with determination. "How can you know that? You can't foresee the future," Gu Ning said. "I won't," Leng Shouting repeated with sincerity. Gu Ning didn't want to hurt him and she didn't want to make him unhappy. "Fine, I trust you for now, but if you dare to do it one day in the future, I'll make you pay for it." Gu Ning pretended to threaten him. "I'll prove it to you." Although Gu Ning just said that she trusted him for now, Leng Shouting was cheered up already. He also understood that it was impossible for a person to unconditionally trust another one, so he would prove it by his actions. Fenglin Mountain Villa was a little far from downtown. Normally, it took half an hour of driving to get there when there was no traffic jam. Luckily, they left early and avoided the rush hour, but they met many red lights on the way, so they spent 40 minutes on the road before they arrived at Fenglin Mountain Villa. Fenglin Mountain Villa was built halfway up the mountain in an ancient style, and there was a stream that was 1 or 2 meters wide around the outside of the mountain villa. The stream flowed down from the top of the mountain and then passed through the mountain villa. In the mountain villa, there was also a 10-meter-high waterfall. At the bottom of the waterfall was a pool about 10 square meters in size, and there was a spinning water wheel next to it. It felt like they transmigrated to ancient times the moment that they walked into Fenglin Mountain Villa. Fonlin Mountain Villa was very famous in the capital for its beautiful views and delicious food. Many rich people and the authorities were frequent visitors here. However, it wasn't very large, and there were only 18 private rooms and no dining hall. Therefore, guests had to make a reservation beforehand. Fonlin Mountain Villa was always popular, but its owner had no intention to expand it, because he preferred to keep its rarity. What most rich people liked was precisely the rarity. Gu Ning and the others decided to have a tour around Fonlin Mountain Villa first, after they parked the cars in the parking lot, because it was still too early for their dinner reservations. Gu Ning, would you mind if we had a competition of kung fu for fun? When they walked to an empty grassland, Su Jinchen proposed. He was very curious about Gu Ning's level of kung fu. An ordinary girl couldn't have gotten control of two suspects with guns with their hands empty. However, Su Jinchen didn't believe that Gu Ning could be better than him because he had been trained strictly in the army for so long and had fought against terrorists on the battlefields. On the other hand, Gu Ning was merely a common high school student. She might be good at fighting ordinary people, but was hardly comparable to professionals. Su Jinchen had no intention to beat Gu Ning down. Instead, he was just curious about her level of kung fu. Before Gu Ning could respond, Si Ming and Su Qining started to criticize Su Jinchen. Su Jinchen, how can you take advantage of a young girl? Aren't you afraid that shouting will tear you apart? Exactly, Jinchen, you're a man. How can you fight against a girl? Qiu Yusin disagreed with Su Jinchen's proposal, but she thought that Su Jinchen had to be doing it for a reason. Qiu Yusin was indeed right. Come on, you know nothing about Gu Ning at all. She's excellent at kung fu, and we will just be competing for fun. I won't hurt her. And Xiaoting didn't say anything yet. Why do you all have to be so angry? Su Jinchen argued. Hearing that, both Si Ming and Su Qining looked at Gu Ning with surprise. Then they looked at Leng Xiaoting, who didn't seem like he was going to stop them. The source of this content n/o/v/l by n. Gu Ning smiled and said, I haven't fought in a long time, and I kind of miss it. Let's do it! Since Gu Ning agreed, Leng Xiaoting wouldn't stop her. Si Ming as well as Su Qining remained quiet, while Chen Meng was full of anticipation. He was waiting to see Su Jinchen fail. Su Jinchen and Gu Ning then took off their coats. Do you want me to hold back some strength? Su Jinchen asked Gu Ning, in case she would be hurt. No, thanks. Gu Ning directly rejected. However, in case Su Jinchen would intentionally hold back his strength to protect her, Gu Ning said to him, use your full strength please, or you probably won't win. Hearing that, everyone but Leng Xiaoting and Chen Meng were shocked. Aren't you afraid that I'll hurt you? Su Jinchen asked. Maybe Gu Ning was much better than he had thought. Haha, you can try. Gu Ning laughed a little. Very well, Su Jinchen replied. Let's begin now. After that, the competition began. In the beginning, neither of them used their full strength because they just did it for fun and didn't want to hurt each other. Su Jinchen had thought that he could easily get control of Gu Ning within seconds. However, once Gu Ning started to move and attack him, he felt her strength and realized that it seemed like she had received professional training. Su Jinchen didn't dare to underestimate Gu Ning's ability now. As time went by, both of them increased the force of their attacks, but it was still even, which shocked Su Jinchen. Leng Xiaoting and Chen Meng were also astonished, because Gu Ning had made a lot of progress within a short time. She was far better than before when she had competed with them. However, no one was more surprised than Si Ming, Su Qining and Qiu Yusin. It was beyond their imagination that Gu Ning was so good at fighting. The source of this content n/o/v/l/by/n. Su Jinchen finally got frustrated, so he no longer treated Gu Ning as a young girl, but his real opponent. Gu Ning had improved herself a lot recently and she wasn't timid at all facing Su Jinchen's aggressiveness. She also started to use her full strength without the help of her power. It was very exciting for Su Jinchen to have the competition with Gu Ning, just like he had done with other teammates in the Red Flame. People around them were also excited and enjoyed the show. Many were quite surprised by Gu Ning's agility and powerful attack. Jesus, she is so unbelievable. Indeed. It was even, but they all only complimented Gu Ning. Women were always thought to be weak when compared to men, but now a young girl was able to stay strong in the competition with a muscular man, which made people admire Gu Ning. All right, I think it's time to stop. When they had been fighting against each other for a long while, Leng Xiaoting reminded them to stop. Although there was no winner or loser, they had enjoyed it. Hearing that, Gu Ning and Su Jinchen ceased at once. Leng Xiaoting took out tissues to wipe the sweat off Gu Ning's face, which was quite sweet. When the competition was over, a round of loud applause sounded. Jesus! Gu Ning, I didn't expect that you're so awesome. Su Qinyin jumped in front of Gu Ning with her face full of admiration. Su Jinchen had already felt hurt when he couldn't beat Gu Ning, and now his cousin even showed her obvious admiration towards Gu Ning right in front of him. I'm not bad either. Why don't you compliment me? Su Jinchen said. Come on, you're a military officer but you failed to beat a young girl. Su Qinyin replied. Su Jinchen was annoyed, but he also felt embarrassed. At this moment, Si Ming remained unusually quiet. He didn't make fun of Su Jinchen, because he knew that he would be the same if he fought against Gu Ning. They were the ace members of the National Special Forces, but they couldn't beat a young girl, which was quite embarrassing. Well, it's time for dinner now. Let's go to the private room. Qin Meng didn't want to expose the fact that he couldn't beat Gu Ning either, so he immediately changed the topic. After that, they walked to their private room and the onlookers dispersed. Before the meal, Gu Ning called in Guangyao about the ongoing project. It had all gone well. However, the sky turned dark around 6 p.m. in winter, so they couldn't continue measuring without light, and would come back tomorrow. The designer and surveyors would stay until they finished their work, but Guangyao had to leave tomorrow because he still had a company to manage in City G. After the meal, Su Jinchen proposed to go have fun in a club, but Leng Xiaoting rejected, because Gu Ning was on her period now and she needed more rest. You're in an uncomfortable condition now, and I was afraid that you'd be bored, so I turned Jinchen down, Leng Xiaoting explained to Gu Ning when they were back in the car. I understand, thanks. Gu Ning smiled. She of course understood why Leng Xiaoting did that, and she felt touched. On their way back, they passed an amusement park, and there was a Ferris wheel with all its lights ablaze. Gu Ning suddenly got interested and wanted to play in the amusement park. Leng Xiaoting of course wouldn't reject her, even though he thought that amusement parks were for children. No matter whether it was in her previous incarnation or this incarnation, Gu Ning had never been to an amusement park, so she really wanted to give it a try. Although it was a winter night, there were many people inside. Leng Xiaoting parked the car in the parking lot before he went to buy tickets. In the amusement park, many young couples or families were having fun and it was full of children's cheers. Gu Ning came into this amusement park for the Ferris wheel. So the moment they entered, Gu Ning pulled Leng Xiaoting, walking straight to it. There was a long line for the Ferris wheel, and they were waiting at the end of the line. It is said that a couple that takes the Ferris wheel together will end up breaking up, Gu Ning said. Hearing that, Leng Xiaoting pulled Gu Ning to leave right away. Then we won't take it. He refused to break up with Gu Ning. Ha ha, Gu Ning snorted with laughter. However, when the Ferris wheel moves to the highest point and the couple kisses each other, they will be together forever. Really? Ling Xiaoting asked with doubt. Yes, if you don't believe me you can go and ask other people. Gu Ning felt like laughing. He was really like a cute kid, but anyway, he really loved her a lot. Ling Xiaoting always trusted Gu Ning, but he also took their happiness seriously. Wait a second, Ling Xiaoting said to Gu Ning, then walked to a nearby worker. Gu Ning didn't expect that Ling Xiaoting would really go and ask other people. She was surprised as well as amused. And she was also curious whether Ling Xiaoting would feel embarrassed when he went to ask others about the kiss. Ling Xiaoting asked the worker and another 2 visitors, and they all said the same thing. Didn't you feel embarrassed? Gu Ning asked him when he walked back. Not at all, Ling Xiaoting replied. As long as it concerned Gu Ning, he didn't feel that it was embarrassing at all. When it was Gu Ning and Ling Xiaoting's turn, they sat in the Ferris wheel together. As the Ferris wheel moved upwards, the noise and cheers on the ground started fading away. It felt like they were the only 2 people left in this world. Gu Ning appreciated the beautiful view in front of her eyes, but Ling Xiaoting fixed his eyes on her the entire time. What? Gu Ning asked. We're going to reach the highest point, Ling Xiaoting said. Apparently, he had been waiting for it. Ha, Gu Ning laughed again. We just moved 1/3 of the route. Ling Xiaoting looked upwards and suddenly felt like the Ferris wheel moved very slowly. When they had almost reached the highest point, Ling Xiaoting's kiss fell on Gu Ning's lips. Not only Gu Ning and Ling Xiaoting, every couple started to kiss when they reached the highest point. It was said that the Ferris wheel was set for couples. It was said that every time the Ferris wheel turned, there was a couple who kissed each other on the earth. That each of the gondolas were full of happiness and the Ferris wheel existed for the reason that people who loved each other could share happiness together. It was said that you would be happy once you sat in the Ferris wheel. As the Ferris wheel moved upwards, you could get rid of the noise on the ground. In that case, you would be near to God, and you could make a wish when you reached the highest point. God would hear it, and if God believed that you were a good kid, your wish would come true. However, those were all old sayings which could comfort people. When the Ferris wheel passed the highest point, Ling Xiaoting didn't stop. Gu Ning had to pinch him to make him stop when they had almost arrived at the ground, but Ling Xiaoting looked at Gu Ning like he was innocent. Apparently, he wasn't satisfied yet. It was normal that couples kissed in Ferris wheel, but it was unusual that they had kissed for so long. Gu Ning flushed when they walked out. It was still early, around 8 p.m., so they didn't leave right away, but walked around in the amusement park. All of a sudden, a picture flashed by Gu Ning's eyes. She saw a man who was around 40 years old holding a little boy who was around 7 years old at a high bridge. The river was 20 meters below them. After the man lost control of his emotions, he jumped into the river along with the little boy and they both died. The high bridge was right next to this amusement park. Gu Ning and Ling Xiaoting had just passed by it. XU. I suddenly had a premonition. Come on, let's go to the nearby high bridge. Gu Ning couldn't tell Ling Xiaoting that she had jade eyes which could foresee the future, so she could only make an excuse. Sometimes, people might have a premonition when something bad was going to happen. Ling Xiaoting then followed Gu Ning, running to the high bridge. From afar, they noticed that there were many people gathered on it, and many cars parked on the side. A little boy was crying loudly in the arm of the man who was standing on the edge. Seeing the scene, Ling Xiaoting sensed that something had to be wrong, and ran faster ahead. Meanwhile, a young woman was crying while begging, "I can give you money, no matter how much you want. Please just let my son go. I don't want money. I just want Jiang Jinghua to die. He has ruined my life." And if he doesn't come, I'll kill his son, the man roared in anger. It wasn't because he had enough money, but because he knew that money was useless now. He already did it. Even if he was willing to let their son go, they wouldn't let him get away with it. Therefore, he only wanted Jiang Jinghua to die now. And it was acceptable for him to exchange Jiang Jinghua's life with his son's. ID. Hearing the name, Jiang Jinghua, Leng Xiaoting was slightly surprised. He naturally knew who he was, because Jiang Jinghua had a good relationship with the Leng family. Jiang Jinghua? Isn't he the director of the National Medical Products Administration? And the man is Qin Huichuan. He's the chairman of Guanghua Pharmaceutical Factory. I heard that his pharmaceutical factory was found guilty of producing fake medicine, and he went bankrupt and ended up with huge debts. I think that he deserved it. Exactly. Nevertheless, he blames Director Jiang for it and kidnapped his son. Hearing the discussion among the crowd, everyone immediately understood what was happening now, and they all criticized Qin Huichuan. At this moment, Gu Ning and Leng Xiaoting didn't dare to make noise, in case Qin Huichuan would loosen his arm and let the little boy fall, but they couldn't wait without doing anything. Gu Ning used her jade eyes to check the construction under the bridge. She thought that she could probably wait under the bridge and catch the boy when they fell. And she believed that Leng Xiaoting was able to control the situation on the bridge. If the man was going to hurt the little boy on the bridge, Leng Xiaoting could stop him. As long as the little boy was alive, she was confident that they could save his life. Shouting, Gu Ning told Leng Xiaoting her plan in a low voice, but Leng Xiaoting disagreed at once. No, it's too dangerous. You can stay aside, and I'll deal with it. He was worried about Gu Ning's own safety and didn't think that her plan would work. You don't trust me? Gu Ning seemed unhappy. She was angry because Leng Xiaoting didn't trust her, but in her heart, she understood that Leng Xiaoting was concerned about her. Ning Ning, it's too dangerous. Leng Xiaoting said again. I know, but we both want to help the little boy, right? Gu Ning asked. Leng Xiaoting stayed quiet. He obviously wanted to rescue the little boy. Not even mentioning the fact that he was a military officer, the Jiang family also had a good relationship with the Leng family. Since we agree, why won't you let me try it? It was the first time that Gu Ning had been really angry at Leng Xiaoting. She disliked that he wanted to restrict her freedom even though he did it because he cared about her. Most up-to-date NVELs are published on n0velgen.co/m. Leng Xiaoting was worried about her safety, and she had the same feeling towards him, but she chose to believe in him. Otherwise, she wouldn't have allowed him to come here with her. Besides, she had foreseen this accident. If she did nothing, she would blame herself. Seeing Gu Ning getting angry, Leng Xiaoting was nervous. He hesitated for a second, but still agreed in the end. Fine, you have to be careful. Do not get hurt. Hearing that, Gu Ning relaxed. I will be careful. Don't worry. Afterwards, Gu Ning turned back, disappearing from the crowd. Although Leng Xiaoting was still worried about her safety, he knew that the little boy was in the most dangerous situation right now. Leng Xiaoting understood that Qin Huichuan was determined to risk his own life, so it was impossible to negotiate with him. He could only wait until Gu Ning was prepared. If Qin Huichuan and the little boy fell down at the same time, Leng Xiaoting would try to catch them from the above and the rest would rely on Gu Ning. Gu Ning climbed up onto the iron frame of the bridge until she was in position beneath Qin Huichuan. She took out a rope from her telepathic eye space and tied one of its ends around the iron frame, while the other end was fastened around her waist. Afterwards, Gu Ning fixed her jade eyes on Qin Huichuan. There was a knife in Qin Huichuan's hand, so Gu Ning couldn't directly shoot him. The little boy was still crying in fear. Meanwhile, the loud police sirens sounded and several police cars drove over. People around all stepped aside to let them pass through. The police cars stopped in the middle, and policemen got out of the cars one after another. Qin Huichuan, let the boy go and we'll consider giving you a lighter sentence, the leading policeman said to him. Bullshit! Do you think that I'd believe you? I don't care about the sentence. If Jiang Xinhua doesn't die today, his son will. Qin Huichuan was furious. And, if you dare to come one step closer, I'll jump into the river with him. No, please don't do that. Jiang Xinhua's wife, Shen Minfang, begged while crying. 7 sit envelb/n. C/m for L test vels. Because the little boy was an important official's son, the policeman didn't dare to take action, in case Qin Huichuan would lose his reason and hurt the little boy. Tell Jiang Xinhua to meet me right now. He only has 5 minutes. If he can't arrive within 5 minutes, I'll jump down with his son. Qin Huichuan shouted. He knew that the longer it was delayed, the more it would be to his disadvantage, so he wanted to finish it as soon as possible. If Jiang Xinhua was still absent within 5 minutes, he will kill himself along with Jiang Xinhua's son. Jiang Xinhua was actually on his way to the bridge, but he couldn't arrive soon. Gu Ning suddenly thought of the fact that her sight could affect human bodies like what she had done to Chu Pei Han and her other friends on Yuntai Mountain. Thus she looked at Qin Huichuan with her gaze filled with her power to see his reaction. All of a sudden, Qin Huichuan felt his body stiffen slightly. It dawned on Gu Ning that she was able to stiffen someone's body with her power on the condition of consuming a large amount of power, but it was an emergency. Gu Ning didn't care how much power it cost, as long as it could control Qin Huichuan. Therefore, Gu Ning kept attacking Qin Huichuan with her power to freeze his body. At the same time, she sent a message to Ling Xiaoting and told him to be prepared. Ling Xiaoting didn't know what Gu Ning was going to do next, but prepared himself. When Gu Ning thought that it was the right time, she abruptly jumped up from underneath the bridge and hit Qin Huichuan. Everyone was shocked by her sudden appearance. Reporters who had just arrived also caught the scene with cameras, but her face wasn't clear in the photos because of the long distance. Within seconds, Gu Ning got control of Qin Huichuan, while the little boy fell down onto the bridge. People were screaming in astonishment. Ling Xiaoting, on the other hand, dashed ahead to protect the little boy. Luckily, the little boy was safe and was back in his mother's arms, but he had just been through a terrible event and was now crying in fear. Oh, my poor little son. Shen Minfang clasped her son, trembling in horror. As for Qin Huichuan, Gu Ning broke his arms like lightning. He couldn't resist any more and was thrown directly onto the bridge by Gu Ning. After that, Gu Ning, who had consumed a lot of her power and energy, fell backwards. Oh! People screamed again. Ning Ning! Ling Xiaoting's heart was in his throat, and he immediately ran ahead to catch Gu Ning's hand. Although there was a rope fastened tightly around her waist, it would hurt her waist if she fell straight down like that. Ling Xiaoting was powerful and pulled Gu Ning up at once. Everyone around them admired their altruistic behavior. It was obvious that they were a team. Ling Xiaoting unfastened the rope around Gu Ning's waist and ran to an ambulance without delay. The ambulance had actually come here to help the little boy. However, unexpectedly, the little boy was safe, but Gu Ning was injured. I'm fine. I just ran out of energy. I don't need to go to the hospital. Gu Ning didn't faint, but just lacked strength. Ling Xiaoting didn't answer her, but wore a cold expression. He was a little angry at Gu Ning right now, because she had promised to be careful, but still hurt herself. Gu Ning understood why Ling Xiaoting was unhappy, so she didn't say anything else. Instead, she leaned against his chest, quietly like a baby. Although Leng Xiaoting was angry, he was more worried about her. Meanwhile, Jiang Jinghua finally arrived. Seeing that his son was safe, he was greatly relieved and ran to hug his wife and son. Gu Ning went to get examined at the hospital. However, she indeed wasn't injured but only lacked energy. She could leave after she got a glucose injection. Leng Xiaoting couldn't wait and kissed Gu Ning wildly in the hospital to punish her. When Jiang Jinghua heard that the person who had saved his son was admitted to the hospital, he immediately followed them to the hospital. Jiang Jinghua didn't know that it was Leng Xiaoting along with a girl who had rescued his son until he arrived at the hospital, and saw that Leng Xiaoting was taking good care of the girl. The scene in front of his eyes surprised Jiang Jinghua, and he couldn't believe that the man was Leng Xiaoting. The man in his sight was totally different from the Leng Xiaoting that he had met before. Although he hadn't been in contact with Leng Xiaoting often, he knew that Leng Xiaoting was always cold, especially in front of girls. Master Leng had complained about it many times. However, what was happening in front of Jiang Jinghua's eyes was really surprising. Jiang Jinghua wondered whether Master Leng knew about it. If Master Leng knew, he had to be super happy. Jiang Jinghua also understood that Leng Weihua didn't care about family background. As long as the girl was a good girl and Leng Xiaoting liked her, Master Leng wouldn't interfere. Therefore, Jiang Jinghua didn't think further about the girl's family background. "Hi, Director Jiang," Leng Xiaoting greeted Jiang Jinghua. Although the Jiang family had a good relationship with the Leng family, Leng Xiaoting was used to keeping a distance from them. Thus it was already rare that he greeted Jiang Jinghua on his own initiative. Hearing Leng Xiaoting's voice, Jiang Jinghua finally got his mind back. He bowed deeply to Leng Xiaoting and Gu Ning. "Thank you so much for rescuing Haoyang." Haoyang was precisely Jiang Jinghua's son, and his full name was Jiang Haoyang. "We're glad to help, Director Jiang," Leng Xiaoting said. "Well, then I won't bother you any longer." Jiang Jinghua thanked Gu Ning again before he left. When Jiang Jinghua was gone, Leng Xiaoting introduced him to Gu Ning. The Jiang family and the Leng family have known each other for generations. He's the youngest son of Master Jiang and the director of the National Medical Products Administration. His father is Jiang Zhongyu, who is the head of National Antiques Association. We can invite him to have a look around Shangyun Antique Store and help you do the business. "Ha ha," Gu Ning snorted with laughter. "You're really good at making full use of your network." Jiang Zhongyu was a famous expert. If he went to visit Gu Ning's new store, many people would certainly follow. In that case, she didn't need to worry about the sales. What had happened to Jiang Jinghua's son went viral on the internet within a short time. Many were shocked by the moment that Gu Ning abruptly jumped out from underneath. "Jesus! She must be a master of Kung Fu." "Exactly. And the man who protected the kid was so cool too. I think that they must be a team." "I agree. And she broke the criminal's arms like lightning. She's so incredible. What a pity that her face isn't clear. Otherwise, I would go to learn Kung Fu from her." "Agree." The video didn't show the part where Gu Ning fell from the bridge, so nobody knew what had happened to her. Anyway, the little boy was rescued and Qin Huichuan was arrested by the police, which was a good ending. Leng Xiaoxuan was the first one who discovered the news in the Leng family. He screamed in shock after reading it and surprised everyone else around him. "Leng Xiaoxuan, what the hell are you reading?" Leng Xiaojiao was displeased. Leng Xiaoxuan replied, "Uncle Zhang's son was seized by Qin Huichuan." "What?" Hearing that, several senior members of the Leng family were astonished. "What happened?" they asked Leng Xiaoxuan. The most up-to-date NVELs are published on n0velbn.co/m. Uncle Zhang's son was seized by Qin Huichuan, but was rescued by a girl, Leng Xiaoxuan said. He looked at Gu Ning in the video with admiration. This girl is so awesome. She jumped out all of a sudden and got control of Qin Huichuan like lightning. Not only Ling Xiaoxuan was shocked, all the others were also quite surprised. Oh, I must tell Grandpa the news, Ling Xiaoxuan said, and ran upstairs. Master Ling was also shocked after hearing about the accident. He called Jiang Zhongyu at once. Luckily, Jiang Zhongyu's grandson was safe. Why does this man look so familiar? Ling Xiaoxuan asked after Master Ling hung up the call with Jiang Zhongyu. Hearing that, Master Ling took Ling Xiaoxuan's phone and had a closer look at the man in the video. He also found that the man looked familiar, but failed to recognize who he was. The screen of the phone was too small for an old man, and the video only showed the back of the man, so Master Ling couldn't recognize the man right away. Grandpa, is it shouting? Ling Xiaoxuan suddenly asked with surprise. Shouting? Hearing that, Master Ling immediately recognized that the man in the video was indeed his grandson, Ling Xiaoting. He then called Ling Xiaoting without delay, and asked him directly. Ling Xiaoting admitted it, and also told Master Ling that he was fine and safe. Su Jinchen and his friends were drinking while singing in a club. Su Qinin, on the other hand, was reading the news on the internet for fun. And she read the news. Within seconds, she recognized Gu Ning and Ling Xiaoting because of their clothes, and told the others the news. All of them were shocked by what Gu Ning had done. Although they knew that Ling Xiaoting was fine, they still called him to make sure that they were safe. After they went back to the house, Gu Ning regained much of her strength. She wanted to walk on her own, but Ling Xiaoting insisted on carrying her in his arms while walking back to the bedroom. Gu Ning was really exhausted today, and soon fell asleep on the bed. Suddenly, she felt like something knocked her against forehead and it was cold. She opened her eyes, and there was a thick fog in her sight. Isn't this the telepathic eye space? She thought to herself. Because she was familiar with the space, she wasn't terrified. However, there were many small crystals the size of a pearl floating in the air. She was confused about what those crystals were, and suddenly there was a line of words that appeared in her mind. In fact, those crystals were a solid form of her power, and could be used to cure diseases. In other words, she could directly use those power crystals to rescue people in the future. The amount of power crystals needed to cure diseases varied in different situations. The power crystals could melt in water, food, or be swallowed directly. Suddenly, it dawned on Gu Ning that she could use those power crystals to make medicines or skincare products, which would be highly profitable. At the same time, she was able to help ill people, which was good too. Once Gu Ning made the decision, she would definitely actualize it. When she opened her eyes again, it was already morning. Gu Ning's body was fully recovered, but Ling Xiaoting still didn't allow her to get up early and demanded that she sleep for a while longer. He even prepared breakfast and let her eat on the bed. Gu Ning felt like laughing, but obeyed his order. Meanwhile, she kept thinking about her plan of producing medicines and skincare products. First, she had to build a professional team to produce medicines and skincare products. Then she needed to establish a factory and a company. After that, she could produce medicines and skincare products in the usual or common way but add her power crystals into them secretly to enhance the effect. Therefore, the prescriptions and materials of medicines and skincare products were the same as those of other medicine factories, but the effect was really different. After the medicines and skincare products were produced and certified, they could come onto the market. Gu Ning decided to sell her medicines and skincare products across the country. As long as her medicine and skincare products were of high quality, there was nothing else to worry about. However, she didn't tell Ling Xiaoting her plan yet. When Leng Xiaoting was not in the bedroom, Gu Ning sent a message to Kay and asked him to help her investigate whether there were any medical companies barely staying afloat. She wanted to acquire one. Kay was surprised by Gu Ning's enthusiasm towards business. It seemed like she wouldn't miss any chance to make money. And Kay of course wouldn't reject his boss's order. Leng Xiaoting didn't allow Gu Ning to get up until he prepared lunch. After lunch, Gu Ning went to the antique street. Since she had bought Shangyun Antique Store, she definitely had to visit it and meet her staff. Leng Xiaoting went along with Gu Ning. The moment that they got to the antique street, Gu Ning unconsciously used her jade eyes to scan the antiques on the stands along the street. After a while, a bronze dagger with black mist mixed with white mist came into Gu Ning's sight. Gu Ning understood that the white mist was natural power, but she was confused by the black mist. She walked nearer and sensed a strong yin on the bronze dagger. Gu Ning guessed that this object was probably evil. Normally, evil objects were dug out from graves, but not every piece of ancient objects carried yin. It depended on the location of the graves. And once people had objects with yin, he or she would be affected by yin. Yin could cause nightmares, diseases, or even death. Gu Ning then looked at the stand owner. He looked pale and lacked energy. His forehead was even slightly dark. Obviously, he was already being affected by the yin. A person's forehead was the most important part of their face, and the condition of their forehead implied the person's luck or fate. If one's forehead was smooth and shiny, the person had good luck, but if the person was going through a hard time, his or her forehead would look rough. However, if the forehead turned black or dark, the person would be in great trouble. The stand owner in front of Gu Ning had obviously been deeply affected by the yin of the bronze dagger. If he didn't dump the bronze dagger right now, his life could be in danger. Gu Ning didn't believe in yin and yang before, but now that she saw it with her own eyes, she had to believe it. "Hi, miss, these are all real antiques that I just bought from the countryside yesterday," the stand owner said to Gu Ning, but he sounded weak. "You updates tnvel/buy.com." Gu Ning thought for a second, and picked the bronze dagger up. A flow of cold air immediately intruded into her body. Gu Ning felt extremely uncomfortable and used her power to protect her heart at once. When Gu Ning used her power to protect her heart, the power moved through her body and to the bronze dagger. Shortly, the black mist of the bronze dagger had decreased a lot. Gu Ning then realized that her power could drive yin away. Knowing that, Gu Ning continued to put her power through the bronze dagger to drive its yin away. Although Gu Ning's power was able to do it, it wasn't easy. When the yin was finally driven away, Gu Ning lost a lot of energy and her face turned slightly pale. "How much is it?" Gu Ning asked. 30,000 yuan. "No bargaining," the stand owner said. "No problem." Gu Ning directly took out 30,000 yuan and handed it to the stand owner. No matter how much was it, Gu Ning was going to buy it anyway, because it was real. Bronze was an instrument made of bronze alloy, created in the Bronze Age of human civilization. From the late Shang dynasty to the Spring and Autumn period and the Warring States period, the bronze dagger was popular and its craftsmanship was excellent. The one in Gu Ning's hands was a bronze dagger with a sheep head made during the Shang dynasty. It was priceless. Seeing that Gu Ning bought the dagger without hesitation, the stand owner regretted that he hadn't sold it at a higher price. What he didn't know was that Gu Ning had saved his life by buying this dagger. "Is this everything that you bought from the countryside?" Gu Ning asked. She indeed wanted to buy some real antiques dug out from the earth. She also didn't want innocent people to get ancient objects with yin. "Yes," the stand owner replied. "Where are these ancient objects from?" Gu Ning asked again. The bronze dagger was newly dug out from the earth, so it must be from somewhere near the countryside. Fengyang Village, the stand owner answered. Thanks, Gu Ning said. What's wrong? Ling Xiaoting thought that Gu Ning must have asked the stand owner so many questions for a reason. This bronze dagger is real and it is newly dug out from the earth. Thus I thought that there is an ancient grave around the countryside where the stand owner got these ancient objects, Gu Ning said, but she didn't tell Ling Xiaoting about the bronze dagger's in. Do you want to go there? Ling Xiaoting asked. Yes, Gu Ning replied. Although it was illegal to dig up an ancient grave, it was necessary for her to do so. Otherwise, more innocent people would be hurt. 1. Bronze alloy is an alloy of copper and tin. Well, that's all for this part, trekkers. See you all in the next video.